All right, here we go. Today we have Lance on Rivera, former business partner of Biggie, doing his first serious sit-down interview. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Thanks, Vlad. Happy to be here.
Well, we've heard your name for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done little things here and there, but for the first time ever, we're actually going to get your whole story.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to start in the very beginning. So you were born and raised in Brooklyn.
Yep.
Okay.
Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn.
So what was Brooklyn like in the 70s and 80s?
It was amazing. It was all about love and community and, family. It was just one big, I was a kid growing up and every block was family. We had cookouts everywhere. We had summer youth programs. We had gang fights. We had summer dirt bikes, and families was hustlers. It was good in the 70s and 80s growing up.
And you had a good sized family, right? You had brothers and sisters, or just brothers?
Yes, I have brothers and sisters on my mother's side and on my father's side. I have 5 brothers and 3 sisters.
Okay, and you have older brothers?
Yes.
Okay, and your older brothers kind of got mixed up in the streets before you did?
No, I was bad guy. I was
you
a bad kid.
Guy.
I was a really, I was a bad kid till my mother took me downtown Brooklyn to family court when I was 12, and she took me in to see a judge and said, "You take him because I don't want the streets to kill him." And I was committed to a boys' home up until I was 16.
So from 12 years old to 16,
yes.
Even though you had a family
yes.
at home,
yes,
you were put in a boys' home?
Yes.
For 4 years?
Yes.
Was it bad?
It was the worst of every community at that age, from every projects in Brooklyn. And it was pre-Spofford. That was it was like a cycle. That was a project that was designed to, these are the stages that you go through to see if you're going to be a career criminal, and it was psychological warfare. It was kids, but the first time I ever heard about Thorazine was, where they had kids drugged up, walking around like zombies. The same things they do today. So it was pretty bad. It was murderers. It was, the worst of the worst. It was family court. It was, you do a crime at that age. The first time I was ever arrested, I was 9 years old for robbery and assault, and I was still in public school, so it was, but it was for a reason. It was single mom, wanting to help. She had 3 boys at the time. My sister was just born. So it was like, it was trying to help provide. That was my mentality. That was the reason why I was so ambitious about money, and then being raised by, people who was like my mom's, but they were all hustlers and big time hustlers,
Okay, so when you get out of 16, were you better or worse at that point?
I was smarter.
Okay.
I became a really, really smart criminal. I had graduated. I learned how to go into the dime savings bank at 13 years old with bank books, right? The facility, the boys' home. They used to open up bank accounts for the kids in the building, and we used to steal the bank books, and we used to go into the banks and forge their names and withdraw that money. I used to break in the safes that they kept the weekly allowances that they gave, so I became a better, smarter criminal because I was around the best of the best. It was, but it's interesting because all through my life, like the crew that I was hanging out with, 37 years, they just coming home from prison, and it was like I was just on a different path. Yeah. But I was involved with people who was at that age, 12, 13, 14 years old. They was killers and the worst, like I said, the worst of the worst. Same way Mike Tyson grew up, Brownsville. We all from the Brooklyn. And Brooklyn was fun, and it was you had to survive if you was in the streets, and you could have bypassed the streets if you wanted to.
Okay, so you get out at 16 years old.
Yeah.
And then you become a stick-up kid.
Yes.
And you started doing armed robberies.
Yes.
And I think you actually described you were a terrorist on Fulton Street.
I was a terrorist. We was robbing everything that moved. We was breaking in everything. I don't know what to tell you. We were young, we were free, it was funny because at one time I remember being prideful about having summer youth jobs. But then all of a sudden you start watching the stick-up kids sticking up the kids that were making their checks for the summer, and they wasn't working at all. And they was making so much money. And it was like, okay, what do I want to be? I want to be the guy who, so it was one of those things. Everything was education, but to provide,
Okay, and then at age 19, you actually got caught up in one of your armed robberies.
Yes.
And they gave you 2 years.
Yes.
Was that the first time you went to jail?
No. I went to jail on a robbery prior to that and got probation. 5 years probation, like maybe a year before that.
Okay, so you actually violated your probation by getting arrested again.
Yes.
Okay. And this time they gave you 2 years.
Yes.
In adult prison.
Yes.
How was that situation?
It was crazy because I started in Spofford at 19. No, at 17. But I said that back then you could say that you were 15 and a parent could show up with a birth certificate and get you released into their custody. Mm. So at the time I said, I'm 15, but I was big, right? So I go to Spofford and I there for about 3 days, and I realized that these kids was like fighting over cookies and cigarettes. I went back to the judge the next time I went to court and said, I'm not 15. I'm 17 years old. Please get me out of there. And they sent me to Rikers Island. And back then, when I went to Rikers Island in the 80s, it was a race war going on. So it was the blacks against the Puerto Ricans. Mm. So yeah, it was gladiator. It was serious business.
Right, because you went in 85.
Yes.
Okay, so you were there from 85 until 87.
87.
Now, while you're locked up, your big brother starts to build up the block that you guys lived around.
Yes.
And this is around the time the crack was hitting New York?
It was as if he was the guy who started crack in Brooklyn.
Okay.
That's the way the story that we're going to tell on Fulton Street is that it's an amazing story that, because when I left, he was working at Pioneer Supermarket on Nostrand and Fulton, right? I was the guy in the streets wilding, right? So when I come home, while I'm in prison upstate, I've never needed anything. He always took care of me. Visits, packages, But at some point, he started sending me these pictures because I missed when I first went to prison, it was freebase that just started. It wasn't even called crack. It was just people washing cocaine and smoking it, right? But then I started seeing pictures of the results, and he was sending me pictures with medallions the size of this logo, with rope chains on this big, and I'm saying, I'm robbing everybody when I come home. Like, this is what y'all doing now, right? So people coming through Rikers Island, they got this big jewelry on, all these rings, and I'm saying, where did it? And then, so when I came home, it was like, he was the number 2 guy to the biggest heroin dealer in Brooklyn.
Right. And your little brother was actually hanging out with Biggie during this time.
Little C's and those guys. That was his crew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 87, you come out.
Yes.
You're 21 years old.
Yes.
And now the block that you grew up around, Grand and Putnam, is now essentially a drug hub.
Yes.
And your brother's running it.
Yes.
And you start to join into that whole situation.
Yes.
And you start from the bottom.
Yes. I was the doorman.
Right.
I started as the doorman in this big organization. And I went through it. I learned everything. They taught me everything to the time they thought I was ready. And I came home summer of 87, May. They went on vacation New Year's and left me with the whole operation. I was nervous as fuck, but what happened was, they showed me the system, say, you ready, you ready, you ready. So when I go to the stash house and I do what I need to do, my brother Just, his name is Just, he had broken stuff down and wrote little notes. It said, give this to this person when he come, do this. He said, just to make sure that you was, I made sure that you, and that's the way I was raised. They gave me an opportunity. First time I ever sold heroin, when I came home from the boys' home, my mother was messing with a guy and he used to sell heroin. And I was 16 and he gave me heroin. I begged her, I was like, please. And she was like, all right, just give it to him. So she gave me $100 worth of a bundle. So what happened, I had built a relationship with the guy who ran the biggest dope spot, heroin spot on Fulton Street. And he was the doorman. But he used to get high. And I used to go there every day and sit with him and talk to him. And then one day I showed up with this bundle of heroin and I said, yo, I want to be able to knock this off. And my mom's trying. So he said, okay, go in the building. He said, stand in the middle of the steps. He said, and every customer that come in, sell it to them. 3 people came in, I sold the whole bundle. I ran back to the crib and my mom's and her boyfriend. And I said, I'm finished. And she said, boy, get the hell out of my house. She was like, she didn't do no other business with me. Cause she was afraid, like, how did you pull that off? But I had already started working myself into it before I even, and a lot of people these young people today, they wanna, become the boss without learning how to become a boss.
Right. Okay. So you're back in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
You're working with your brothers.
Yes.
On the drug business.
Yes.
Now, Biggie actually lives 2 blocks away.
Yes.
And you meet him that year.
Yes.
And this was that same year where there's that famous video of him battling that dude on Fulton Street.
On Fulton Street.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you there when that happened or no?
No, I wasn't at that battle.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't at that battle.
Were there other battles that you were seeing?
I've absolutely, I seen the second battle between him and Preem.
Okay.
See, that's not on video.
That's not on video.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a lot of battles that Biggie had. Like, a lot of people don't know that Biggie and Jay-Z battled in high school in Westinghouse.
Aha. You saw it?
Somebody who was there. You'll see. I'm telling you, this series is going to tell all of the information.
Okay, so you meet Biggie that year, but you guys aren't really getting close or anything yet.
No, I see what happened is that I come home, my reputation, I was Fulton Street. I was a part of what Fulton Street became, passed down to me and the crew that I was with. And Biggie and them was kids. They were younger. They was running to the corner, getting a peek at what was going on and running back down the block. So now, but we coming through, like I said, my brother Justin and was going to pick Biggie and them up, driving them around in high school. You know, my brother was the man. Like, he was the man in the hood. Like, he was that guy. So everybody, and like I said, my family we were, since kids, we put in work for the neighborhood. So, you know, it was just, Biggie was in my little brother's life and he was in my oldest brother's life. And when I came home and, you know, they started trying to convince me to get into the music business, I wasn't paying no attention to it. But they used to say, this kid. And I'm like, I don't care. You know, I was getting money. I was in the streets hard. Like, that's what y'all want to do, because Biggie and my older brother, they were trying to get the music off. My older brother was always wanting to be, he'd been around that Coogee rap, the hip hop and all of that.
Okay, so this was 87 that we're talking about. Now, fast forward to 1988, over in Queens, rookie cop, 22-year-old Edward Byrne, ends up getting killed. And after investigation, they felt that the hit was actually ordered by Pappy Mason. This made national headlines. Ronald Reagan, who was the president at the time, personally called Edward Byrne's family. And then George H.W. Bush, who ran for president that same year, actually carried around Byrne's badge and would pull it out at rallies and say, when I'm president, I'm going to shut down all these drug dealers and I'm going to have a war on drugs and everything else like that. So then he became president. So by 1989, there was a lot of pressure by the feds on all the drug dealers around the country. And we were talking about this earlier. A lot of guys, drug dealers, murderers, criminals, started to make their way into the music industry. Like, what did you see in terms of that in a big picture?
I mean, it was after the Edward Burns situation, they created TNT in New York. And TNT was the downfall of the drug dealer in New York City. Because they open warrants, they didn't care who you was. They had corrupt cops locking up the wrong, you know, crackheads was making up stories. It was corrupt 77 precinct in the Bronx, like up the precincts up in Fort Apache, the Bronx. It was a mess, right? So, but it was so much money, right? After Bush was starting running for president, he targeted Fat Cat, Preem, and Tommy Mickens, right? And that was the beginning of New York drug dealers making their way out of town. Baltimore, D.C., Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina. But what was happening is that the mentality of New York hustlers went out there aggressively, and then there was so much murder, so much money first, then so many murders second, that these new SBI, federal task force started coming down on the out of New York drug dealers. They're giving them a lot of time, setting people up, lying, the natives making up stories about New York drug dealers, giving them all kinds of homicides that they committed. And so now New York drug dealers are saying, hold up, we need to be able to take our money now and move into something more legitimate. And at that time, what was more legitimate than the music business? Hip hop had embraced the streets. The streets were saying, okay, we want reparations. So now millions of dollars, because it happened to me. It happened to, I watched a guy named Keita Massenberg, who was responsible for D'Angelo and Erykah Badu.
Yep.
And watch him and assume that he was a drug dealer. He used to come through Fulton Street every night, stop at the store, jump out, Rolex on. I'm saying, who the fuck is this guy? Right? So I'm like, so next thing you know, we had a stash house. My brother Just, the same one that he left the little notes for me for, right? He next door to him, I see some guys, and this guy, Kedar, he pulls up and they have a brownstone right next door. And I see all of these exotic cars pulling up. I'm saying, just those guys got to be drug dealers. He's saying, no, that's Daddy-O and them, the musicians. I'm saying, for real, right? So the next thing you know, I started talking to Kedar. Then I met his cousin, Jacob York. And I seen Jacob. One day I was on the block, and Jacob used to walk up and down the street. And I stopped him one day and I said, I need you to teach me everything you know about the music business. And the first thing he did was when he got me 2 books, the Hitman,
okay,
and this world of business, music business is one. This business of music, right? That was the second one. This business of music, and he used to had these classes, and made sure that he'll ask me questions about these books, and I had to tell him, right? He made me study these books, so I'm saying, okay, that's what we're gonna do, right? So now I'm saying, all right, I still don't feel that there's money in the music business.
By 1991, this was before Big got signed, okay? Big was still selling crack.
Yes.
And at one point, he goes to North Carolina.
Yes.
And he gets caught. Were you involved in any of his operations when he was up in North Carolina, or when he was doing, when he was selling on the block in Brooklyn?
I was involved because we were the suppliers to everybody.
Okay, so he was basically, you were his plug.
Exactly.
Okay, so he goes up to North Carolina, he gets caught selling crack, ends up doing 9 months. He gets out. And at that point, he starts to take rap a little more seriously.
He always took rap seriously.
Okay. But, after spending 9 months in jail, you have a slightly different perspective.
No, he still didn't take rap seriously. He took rap seriously, not from a business perspective. He was just like me. He didn't know where the money was. He knew that he seen what he saw.
Right.
Right? He didn't... He had no, we seen Big Daddy Kane and them drive through Brooklyn looking like drug dealers. And we seen all of these rappers from that era.
Yeah.
they all so big saying, yes, that's what I want, but there's nobody coming.
Right. Well, then in 1992, after he gets out from doing the 9 months, he puts together a demo.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. C gets a hold of that demo.
Yeah.
He gives it to Matty C at the Source, who's doing the unsigned hype column, which at the time was almost like a kingmaker type column. Whoever ended up in this unsigned hype was guaranteed a record deal.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you fast forward, you know, DMX got to start from unsigned hype,
big.
Eminem,
It was big.
Common, Mobb Deep, laundry list of people who are still, you know, significant to this day.
Yeah.
So he gets an unsigned hype. Puffy sees the article, gets a hold of the tape, and then signs Biggie to Uptown Records. And the first thing he shows up on is Mary J. Blige's Real Love remix,
Which Daddy-O produced.
which Daddy-O from Stetsasonic produced.
And that was in the next to the stash house in the basement. That I said, those guys look like drug dealers. And my brother said, that's Daddy-O in them.
Right. So Biggie is signed. He shows up on this remix, but he really doesn't have any money at this point.
No.
Is that when you step in and start to actually finance his dreams?
I was, like I said, my brother and them was financing his dreams before I even got involved.
Okay, got it.
He was taken care of. Like he Big didn't have to do nothing that he did, right? His mother was a hardworking woman, right? She provided for him. Been providing for him. He was going to private school. It was just that thing in a young person growing up in Brooklyn. We all had it. It was that pull to the streets, right? He used to be a booster. We had some of the most famous, toughest boosting females in my neighborhood. One thing you'll see that on the series. These women was terrorists, female terrorists, and everybody from every hood used to come down there and try to get with them because they were boosters. They would dress their men, the flyers, the everything, and they made them relevant to other neighborhoods, right? And Big used to go boosting with them. He was a booster. People don't even talk about that. He used to, because his mother didn't give him money where he could buy labels, right? She was a church woman. She simple, whatever money she was making. But she kept him clothes, fed. But he wanted to be in the streets. He had ambition. He wanted the girls. All of those lyrics that he write about taking the Izar logo and putting it on a bootleg, bow, look at your face, being bullied that's what they used to do. If you couldn't afford it, I literally know people who used to go and cut this alligator off and put it on another shirt that was much cheaper. Right? It's been like that since the beginning of time.
Yep. Okay. So your brothers were already taking care
Yes.
of Biggie. And you started to step in at one point and take care of him as well.
I inherited everything that my brother was doing. I inherited Biggie because he used to tell me, Biggie, Biggie, Biggie. My brother tried. Every day he was like, let's get behind Big. And I'm like, where the money at?
Yeah.
I'll provide, I'll look out, but you guys want to be in the music, you want studio time and you want backing. And I'm saying, I don't know about that.
Right. I mean, Matty C, who was around Biggie at the time, he says he remembers that time where you would come over, you just buy everyone breakfast, including him. You gave Biggie money for weed. You would drive him around. You'd buy everyone clothes and everything else like that. So you guys became close.
Right.
Well, that next year in 93, Uptown ends up firing Puffy.
Mm-hmm.
So then he starts Bad Boy Records.
Mm-hmm.
And Biggie signs to Bad Boy,
Mm-hmm.
along with Craig Mack.
Mm-hmm.
And then around that time, Biggie has his daughter as well.
Mm-hmm.
You actually give him money
Mm-hmm.
to help out his daughter.
Yeah.
But Big is still on the block selling crack during this time.
And he was signed to Puffy.
Right. Because there's no money yet. Was it around this time that you sent Biggie to North Carolina at your stash house to just kind of chill?
Yeah, well, Puff kept telling him it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine, and it's gonna be fine. And he was like, yo, I'm pressed. I've got a baby on the way. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, it's my mom's, it's true story on records. Like, my mom's sick. Like, I need something to do. And I'm like, okay, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go on a little trip and you're gonna clear your head. And, we had a stash house down in North Carolina. Went down there and all he was doing was just living, and Puff was looking for him, because he was, he had just closed the deal with Clive, so he was like, where's he at? Where's he at? And Big was like, yo, is this guy, is he serious though? You know,
right, because there's no money yet.
There's no money yet. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So Big starts working on Ready to Die.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the time, Puffy was his official manager.
Yes.
So he was signed to Puffy, and Puffy was his manager at the same time.
Yes.
Mark Pitts, who was Puffy's cousin and assistant, was also helping out with Big.
Well, he was the point person. He was the babysitter.
Exactly.
That's how he started. He started because it was a conflict of interest with Puff being a manager and him being signed to his production company.
Yeah.
Right? So now, and Big knew that. He kind of, felt that way. He was, Big was so smart and intelligent because he was making, Mark take less money as a percentage, so.
Wasn't there a situation kind of early on when Big needed money and he ended up selling part of his publishing back to Puffy for like, I don't know, $25,000 or something?
No, that was the original publishing contract from him, whatever advance that Puff gave him from the beginning, that was it all.
That was all.
Because at some point, Jacob had something like a $200,000 publishing deal on the table for Big, and Big kind of was like, at that point he told us that Puff got me, he got me locked in. Like, let's do something to make me on the same level. And
okay, well, Big, but you hadn't met Puffy yet.
No, I hadn't met Puff yet.
Okay, and there was that moment that you and Big went to this Jodeci video shoot. And that's when you met Puffy for the first time.
I didn't even
Well, you didn't even
Puffy.
meet him, but that was the first time you guys saw each other.
Yes.
And what happened there?
Well, when we got to Harlem, it was just me and Big. And when we got to Harlem, Big gets out the car and we're on 125th Street, right across the street from the Mart. Big goes across the street and all of a sudden you see Big's head drop. And he comes back across the street and he starts to tell me that, Puff said, you can't just be bringing anybody with you. Devontae just had got robbed or something around that time. And, and I was like, nah, Big, don't worry about it. It's all good. I was like, just go ahead, have a good time. But I was upset because Puff didn't even give Big the benefit of the doubt. Like, so what, he got somebody with him? Like, that's he always had somebody with him after I was with him, so it just became one of those things where, on my way home, I called my older brother and said, all right, I'm gonna get in the music business just to get on Puff's nerves.
To piss him off.
To piss him off.
Okay. And that was officially your start
Yes.
in the music business.
Yes.
Well, that same year, as Biggie's working on his album, that was around the time that he meets Tupac. Cease used to talk about how Pac used to come around Brooklyn and hang out a little bit here and there.
Used to come hang out. That nigga came on Fulton Street a few times, hung out with us, you know what I mean? Kicked it, you know. That's why we were stuck on him. Like, yo, this is a real motherfucker, you know, because back in them times, Fulton Street was, and just to see somebody of his stature on Fulton Street, like, oh, you a real motherfucker, dog.
And Pac was already more seasoned than Big. Digital Underground, he had his album, everything else like that. At one point, Pac started hanging out with Haitian Jack, but you already knew Haitian Jack from before.
Yeah.
I guess you actually met him during a shootout.
Actually, like I said, you'll see it on the show, right? But it's interesting because the guy who my brother was working for, when I came home, I admired the guy before I went to prison, right? But he had nephews, and these nephews was drug dealers. We were stick-up kids, but the guy, Benny Thomas, he was a drug dealer, and his nephews was drug dealers. But there was some sort of friction between a guy who I grew up with on Fulton Street named Puma Lee, and one of their cousins, Benny Thomas' nephews, was named Katt. And those guys there's a crew up in the 90s in like going towards Flatbush, right? And it was the Cats versus the Puma Boys, right? They were arch enemies, right? And Puma Lee and their cousin Katt, they on Fulton Street. So it was a tension between those guys, my crew, and those guys because of that conflict. I admired these guys because they were drug dealers. I'm saying, man, they got all the girls. You know, I want to be a part of that. So I end up going to prison, right? No, before I go to prison, Puma Lee, it escalates, right? Right before I go to prison, they end up having a drop on me one day, right? That's something that escalated. They have me. They're getting ready to kill me, right? But somehow, some way, you'll see that I get away, right? I round up my crew from Fulton Street, and the next thing you know, on site, we walking down the street that night, going to get these dudes, and then all of a sudden, this crazy shootout happens, right? So for the next 2.5 weeks, it's on site every time we see each other. And just so happened, Haitian Jack was boarding. I don't know, because I didn't know Haitian Jack. I just knew that it was him and a big dude that he used to ride around with named Tim. And they, you know, they were friends with Inch and Haitian Jack and all of them from Flatbush in the 90s. And it just escalated. And every time we used to see each other, every time it was on site, shooting, whatever it took. And years later, Scooter is the one who made us, stop beefing. And, and it was at a party in Atlanta that somebody threw for me.
Okay, so you and Haitian Jack became cool years later.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tupac, he meets Biggie, and he's in New York. I think he's filming Above the Rim.
Mm-hmm.
And he's hanging out with Haitian Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Biggie, I guess, warned Tupac about Haitian Jack.
Mm-hmm.
But Pac didn't really listen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a rumor that you told Pac not to hang out with Haitian Jack, but he didn't listen.
Well, I told Pac, but I said, I think you're out of your league right now. You know?
Mm-hmm.
He had asked me about Jack. And I had known Jack through Scooter. And I said, you're out of your league.
You hang with the big boys now.
Yeah, you're out of your league.
And then a situation happened later that year Well, I guess Biggie and his crew showed up to Pac's hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
They left some of their guns there.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that same hotel room, that was when the whole sexual assault thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
So then when the police came and arrested everyone, they found Biggie's guns and everything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, Pac ends up getting hemmed up in this whole case along with Haitian Jack and some other guys and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we fast forward then to 1994 and Biggie's debut album drops, Ready to Die. His first single, Juicy, when they start doing the video, you're involved in the actual video.
Yeah. Puff gave me a shot at co-directing that video.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like my first mentor in being a director. What's interesting is that Puff was smart back then because he lost money intentionally at a gambling while they was shooting dice, just so they wouldn't rob him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was smart. This kid, he's worth everything he has. He's smart enough to have gotten.
Okay, and this single introduced the world to Biggie. I mean, even though he had some stuff here and there, he had like the Dolly My Baby, remix and so forth. This was the first solo single. Which blew up.
And Big was scared to death.
Really?
Yeah, because he was like, listen, Puff's getting ready to screw my career. And what do you mean he's going to screw your career? He's like, I'm telling you, he's going to screw up my career with this. He wanted Machine Gun Funk to be his first single.
Biggie wanted it.
Biggie.
Yeah. And Puff was like, no, we're going to do more of the bubblegum kind of single.
Yeah. And, Big's, that's why I said Big was, his push for Junior Mafia was to balance out those commercial records. Right.
So during this time, you and Big are meeting up and coming up with the idea for Junior Mafia.
Well, like I said, Jacob had already put me through school. So it was based on Biggie. The Junior Mafia was just 3 members. It was Chico Delvec, right? Who really was Big's connect to drugs. He was his plug, Chico, right? Little C's and Nino Brown, and they were called the Sixes. They had 3 sixes, like 666.
Wasn't Bugsy in the group also?
No, I'm talking about before that, right?
Okay, got it.
All Big used to just hang out on Fulton Street and smoke weed all day, all night, and rap. And Big would flirt with girls, right? But Big was a boss. The first logo is. It was based on the cartoon Penelope Pit Stop. That was the first Junior Mafia logo because that's how Big used to remind me that he was this really big guy and he had all of these short henchmen. So if you look at their first logo that was ever done, that's how they look, like the little henchmen in the Penelope Pit Stop, right? So,
okay.
But it was only 3 members, right? But it was just the name. It was his crew, right? There was no music. He didn't know about nothing. So after Jacob talked me into stop thinking, because Undear started as a marketing company, right? So that's where the Undears, instead of ideas, I replaced it with Undears.
Right. Was short for understanding.
Yes,
which was your nickname.
I was a 5% growing up.
Got it.
Yeah, since I was 11, something like that. But I went to Big after that and I said, here's the plan for Junior Mafia. And that included Lil Kim, everybody, the Snakes, Rayshawn and Anton.
Right. The Snakes was Larceny and Trife.
Larceny and Trife.
Right.
Klepto. Now, mind you, Klepto was his name. Klepto comes from because he was a booster. Kleptomaniac. But Klepto used to sell Big all kinds of shit. You know what I'm saying? Versace. Klepto introduced Big to Versace and all of that, right?
Okay.
So Klepto had a Q45 green. And one thing about Big is if you had your own weed and you had a car to drive him around, he was putting you on. That was his promise to everybody. Like, if you could drive him around, like, and because I realized that through my research of the story, he promised so many people that they should have been what was to him, right? And I'm saying, man, you guys really believe that, you guys, we put in work to get to what we accomplished. So,
well, early on, there were some other people that were supposed to be in Junior Mafia.
Yes.
One of which was Nas.
Yes.
And this was pre-Illmatic Nas. This was Live at the Barbecue Nas.
See, and
who didn't have a record deal yet.
Yes. See, what happened is that he did, at the time, he just got his record deal. And this is when Faith Newman had him, right? Daddy-O, the first time I've seen Nas, right? Through It Ain't Hard to Tell. When I first seen the It Ain't Hard to Tell video, I said, yo, Big, this kid is perfect for this group, right? Now, this is how the universe in the story was working, is that I never met Nas, right, at this moment in time. But as we was shopping Junior Mafia, Daddy-O took me to Faith Newman's office, and she had just signed Nas. And she said, Daddy introduced me as this brilliant marketing director, visionary, and she gave me Nas's second single and said, can I come up with a video treatment for it? And the video was with him. I wanted Toni Braxton, who was hot at the time, to be like the girl in the video, right? So the next thing you know, Biggie and Nas do a show at somewhere in their early career. Big had Party and Bullshit. Nas might have had Live at the Barbecue. Mm-hmm. They end up doing the show, and Nas starts liking Caesar's sister, Thais. Right. Sorry, Ty. Right. But because I used to say, yo, why does Big hang out with C's? Why, like, trying to find a story, and I'm asking everybody, trying to piece it all together. And I'm saying, well, why would Big hang out with C's the way he hung out with C's? Like, yeah, he was a little brother, but C's was just a kid. Like, he was a child. Like, he was and Big embraced him. And I said, Thais. I said, so this is how they met, Big and Nas. They did a show. Nas started liking Thais at that show. He comes to, Nas had just got signed. He had the Lexus, gray Lexus. So he used to come through the hood. And one day Big tells C's, yo, let's, I'll wait to tell you the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, another member that was supposed to be in Junior Mafia early on was Foxy Brown.
Foxy Brown.
And I've heard rumors about this.
Yeah.
Different versions of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was before the Foxy Jay-Z song, the Ain't No?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
1,000%.
So she was like 15 at the time?
Yeah, she was a kid.
She was a kid.
She was a kid. They were all kids. They were all Nas, Jay, Big, all of them kids.
Okay. Well, Foxy was around, but so was Lil Kim.
Yes.
But Lil Kim rapped very different back then.
Yes.
What did she sound like?
Well, she sounded like, when I first heard her rap, Jacob York actually let me hear her, told her to rap for me. And that's when I put her in the group, Junior Mafia. Because, all this other story you done heard, that's the wrong story. If we're going to tell it all in the right context. Mm-hmm. But he said, listen to her, and when she raps, she sound like Fredro from Onyx, right? But I was a marketing guy, right? So I'm saying, man, you see this adorable, beautiful little girl, and she had the presence of Biggie. Like she had it like that, right? And Big hated it. He was like, no, hell no, right? No, she sounds like a boy. And I'm saying, but that's the aggression. Like, and he's like, hell no, right? Big did not start liking her vocal tone. Not that she couldn't rap. He loved her as an artist and image, but her vocal tone until he heard her rap on Backstabbers. When he heard her sound like a girl, that's when he was like, now I want to fuck you on a record, like listening to you.
Okay, and I remember you telling me that early on, Big would kind of mess with Kim a little bit and say, "Oh, I'm going to sign Foxy instead of you."
Yeah, because he thought Foxy was really dope. Like we were all one big happy family. It went left. It got there was an incident with some AK-47s was pulled out. And it was war getting ready to happen in the hood between the two factions of Kim and Foxy, because she had some guys from the hood that was managing her, and all of those things. So, but the real fallout came with Thelma and Louise when we were trying to put that record together. It just it was there. It was everybody was like you probably heard the record with, that Jay had wrote for Foxy at that time. And, Foxy had made her commitment to the record. And Kim was just like, it just went south from there. And that's why their relationship still hasn't been mended, because they were sisters at one time, same age, it wasn't no... Biggie, one thing about Biggie, he knew how to keep everybody together. He knew what his vision was. Nas created the fallout between Nas and Biggie came behind him not really wanting to do, okay, Nas want to be Nas, right? They competitive, right? So it's rap. Who's the best? Who's the best? Who's the best? So Nas says, I can create my own Junior Mafia. And he takes Foxy and he goes get AZ and he creates the firm.
Right.
And they start, and that's where it's a lot of subliminal bars from Biggie and Nas back and forth. You'll find out about who was talking about who and what records. So it was a real battle going on.
Okay, so you and Biggie form on DS Entertainment, with Junior Mafia being the focus.
Yes.
Biggie is hot, but he's not a superstar yet. He's still kind of building up. You start to shop around this project, and you end up signing with Craig Kalman over at Atlantic with the Big Beat label, which is under Atlantic.
Well, at the time, Craig Kalman was just Big Beat, but Atlantic distributing the record.
Right. They're the parent company.
Craig Kalman had just lost his biggest artist at the time. So he had, he wanted, I asked Craig Kalman at, early on at these meetings, what is it that you want? And he said, I want to be the president of Atlantic. So I was like, okay, I want to take over, make movies. So he says, well, Atlantic owns A-Vision. And that's the same people who put out Murder Was the Case movie, right? Okay. So because the whole concept of Junior Mafia involved everybody. It was one big concept that, Biggie wanted to start his own family Biggie and Junior Mafia, and we were going to get Dr. Dre and the Dog Pound, who had their own family, and Scarface and Luke from Miami. And it was interesting because at this time, Luke and Suge and them was at war, right? So Luke invites us all down to Miami. I was there when the Jimmy Henchman beef started with Suge Knight, because this was the original beef that they encountered from that thing. That's because Luke did a good thing. He invited everybody. He paid for everybody to come down to Miami, and he wanted to put an end to that back and forth that was escalating things, right? So Suge was just, and I met Suge that night, and he believed in the concept of giving, the videos and, making little movies and all that. He believed in the concept. And then all of a sudden, he just became this holy terror and just started running around. But a lot of things were happening that were good versus the millions of dollars that were at stake, and we as the young Black drug dealers, and like I said, at that moment, Harry O and them was thinking about how to get out of the streets, and they backed Suge with some money, right? It's the story I can give you. Every J Prince, everybody was running from the feds. You know what I'm saying? So, but they wanted to keep what they earned because they earned it in an honest way.
Okay, so you guys are doing this. You guys are getting your deal at Big Beat, and Junior Mafia is starting to, come together as a real project.
Mm-hmm.
Tupac and Biggie still have their relationship. They do Running from the Police together. And then you guys have a session at Quad Studios in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Lil Sean session, right?
No.
No?
That we had nothing to do with that Lil Sean session. We were there doing a Junior Mafia's first record after we got the deal.
Got it. Okay, so you guys are at Quad Studios working on your record.
Yes.
Lil C's is hanging out on the balcony.
Yes.
And he happens to see Tupac's bandana.
Yes.
And he was like, oh shit, Tupac, what up?
Yes.
Just randomly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on up.
Mm-hmm.
Come smoke with us.
Mm-hmm.
It was our first studio session, and we was in the recording Players Anthem. Clark Kent, of course, Un was in there, because Un was partners with Big, with Undears, and Big and the Mafia. So we was all in there, we all geeked up our first session, we happy, we hype as fuck, you know what I'm saying? We got some advance money ourselves now, you know what I mean? Shit lit, you know what I'm saying? So me and Nino just went on the terrace, like, yo, let's go smoke. We're gonna go smoke one by ourselves. It was a bunch of weed in there, like, yo, let them smoke. Me and you gonna roll up and go on the terrace, you know what I'm saying? And me and him were just sitting in there just having one of the moments like, yo, can you believe it? Like, yo, dog, like, oh shit, this shit really real. Like, yo, we got a deal. Like, we just kids, we hype. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some told me to look over, because of course we high up, I'm looking over and I see like a few dudes walking down the block. I'm like, I see the bandana. He's always wearing that bandana and shit. So I'm like, and we've been hanging around him a few times. You know what I mean? So I know when I see him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking down, I'm like, they're like Tupac. And we knew Stretch too. God bless the dead Stretch as well. God bless R.P. Tupac. And I knew both of them. So I could just see. I know how Pac walk and all that. So I'm like, oh shit, I look like Pac. Yo, and I'm yelling like, yo, Pac. And he looked up, he couldn't see us. He looking up, he like, who that? I'm like, yo, this C's, Lil C's, what's up? Who? Lil C's. Yo, what's up, little nigga? What's good? I said, yo, what up? Where you going? He said, where y'all at? I said, yo, I'm gonna come downstairs. I said, yo, come around to the corner and I'm gonna come downstairs and get you. I go back in the room, I tell Big, I'm like, yo, Big, Pac downstairs. He like, you lying. I'm like, nah, dead ass, he downstairs. He was like, oh, all right, go get him. No regular shit, like, all right, go grab him. That's when me and Nino get into the elevator and we go downstairs. But Nino, crazy shit is, Nino heard the shots before we got downstairs.
So Tupac and his man go into the Quad Studio lobby, and then they get ambushed. 3 guys end up trying to rob Tupac. Pac pulls out a gun, and ends up getting shot up 5 times. Now, this is where the story gets a bit convoluted because there's different versions of the story and movies and everything else like that. But you were actually there.
Yes.
So let's talk about what actually happened. So the shootout happens in the lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Before it happens, Lil Cease tells Biggie that Tupac is downstairs, and Biggie was like, okay, yeah, bring him up.
Mm-hmm.
So Cease comes downstairs
Mm-hmm.
in the elevator. And we've interviewed Cease and so forth. The elevator door opens. Pac is laying there on the ground bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
The guys with the guns tell Cease to get the fuck back in the elevator.
When the door opened, the first person I seen was Stretch. He was tall, because Stretch is like 6 feet. And he was moving his feet from the door. But I'm thinking like, his other homeboy, I'm like, the fuck, these niggas drunk playing? And when I was about to walk out, 2 dudes came from both sides. Get the fuck back in the elevator. Oh, shit. Got me and Nino stepped back in, and they just holding the guns at us. And I was so paranoid and nervous, I'm hitting door open. Now I'm like, the door just did, and they like this. And when the door finally started closing, they went back to them. Started just like, grabbing them niggas up and all type of shit. And me and Nino just looked at each other like, yo.
So Cease gets the fuck back in the elevator, goes back upstairs, and comes out of the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
And you're there.
Mm-hmm.
I go back upstairs, I'm like, yo, B.I. Pac downstairs getting robbed right now. He like, stop playing with me. I'm like, yo, I'm dead ass, though. And he saw my face, and he saw Nino's face too. He like, yo, nah. He like.
Tell me what happens next.
What happens next is I tell Cease and everybody else to go back downstairs. We had guns on us because that's how we was moving back then. We had no idea what was going on, right? So we hide our guns in the studio that we're in. We have no idea that Tupac's downstairs getting robbed, that Puffy and Little Sean and Jimmy Henchman and them are all on another floor. We're just there first day recording Junior Mafia's record. Backstabbers was the record, right? So I send everybody downstairs and I wait with me and Big. Then me and Big ride down on the elevator. When we come down on the elevator door opens up. The cops are standing there. They got their guns drawn. They make us get out the elevator. They search us. They confirm that we're not the people that they're looking for, right? And they let us walk out the building. Me and Big never seen Tupac.
Okay.
That night.
At all.
At all.
Okay. Before that actually happens,
Yes.
Tupac gets into the elevator himself and goes up the elevator to a different floor.
Mm-hmm.
When the door opens, that's where Lil Sean is and Puffy and Jimmy Henchman and everyone like that.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understand, Pac ends up hiding his gun in that studio.
Mm-hmm.
So then after, the police come and the ambulance comes and everything else like that, what I didn't know until we spoke recently is that Pac actually calls Big.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that conversation.
So after the night that it happens with Pac, right? But let me take you back before, because the story is so all over the place, people's version, right? The story, the beginning part of this whole story, right, is on the night that Tupac before he got to the studio, he was on the phone and he was with Stretch and he was with his homeboy Nichols, right? And they all got shot in the studio, right? So Tupac was on the phone arguing with somebody, and it was really aggressive. And Tupac was saying, yeah, well, whatever, suck my dick, fuck you. When you see me, right? And yeah, I'm gonna pull up. I'm on my way there now, right? So when he hung up the phone, they asked him, yo, who was you on the phone arguing with like that? And he said, some nigga named Jimmy Henchman. And the nigga said, nigga, is you crazy? Do you know who Jimmy Henchman is and what Jimmy Henchman might do to you? And he was like, for real? Like, he said, so do you think I should take a gun? And they was like, nigga, we all gonna need guns going to the studio. And he said, yo, my sister just brought up some guns from Atlanta. So I'm gonna, we'll ride up there with the guns, right? So, but the story is so all over the place that he knew what he was going into, going to the studio. If you about the life that you're about, you would have went to the studio ready for whatever was intended for you, right? But the story is that Big should have warned him. Nah, he ain't had nothing to do with it, but he could have warned me about them niggas. But no, before you even got to the studio, you had a long drawn out, I'll kill you, you'll kill me, we gonna get our guns. And that's kind of what happened to Pac. Throughout his whole entire story that I've learned, that he used to say what he gonna say and stand on it, right? It was like everybody who tells a story about him, yo, he got into it with these LA killers. Man, fuck them niggas. And he would go overboard. Like, there was nobody there to say, Pac, chill out, right? When Pac got with Suge, I was like, somebody please get Pac away from Suge, because he gonna keep pouring gasoline on this fool. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, he went there with that energy, right? When he seen C's, who by chance we were in the studio, right? He put his guard down because he don't know what floor we on. He's assuming, oh, I'm good, my nigga Big up there, right?
Oh, he thought Big was with Jimmy Henchman.
With Jimmy Henchman.
And everything was going to be smoothed over.
Yeah.
But you guys are actually in separate studios.
Separate studios. We were on one floor. Quad had like 3 floors.
We don't know that they're.
Yeah, we don't know that they're
Got it.
up there, but we see these niggas in this fatigue and shit. I put niggas on point whenever I move with Big, I move with Big as his number one security guy. Everybody else, you gotta kill them, my niggas first, but I'm the last nigga you gotta kill before you can get to Big.
Okay, so that's what led up to the shooting situation.
Which led up to
these series of events. So,
yes.
The argument with Jimmy Henchman on the
Yes.
phone and the threats and the
so now
tough
he
talk and
goes
everything.
there,
Yeah.
he ends up getting jammed up in the hallway from whatever story was told by everybody who was there, right? Whoever was there told the story. He ends up getting shot. He goes upstairs. He has his gun that he came to the studio with. He hides it in the piano. And then what everybody don't know is that Pac called Big after that incident, right? And said, Big, I left my gun in the studio. Send somebody to get it. So I sent 2 people up to the studio. One of them is the only person who had access because it was taped off, being investigated. He was the only one who could get past that yellow tape. We retrieved Tupac's gun and made sure that, because if Tupac had got caught with that gun, because think about it, everybody's story is Tupac pulled his gun out, he shot himself, all right, but no, Big, his man, he called his man and said, yo, Big, but everybody want to make it seem like Tupac set Big up in the studio.
Big set Tupac up in the studio.
Big set Tupac up
exactly.
in the studio.
But what you're telling me is that after the shooting occurred, Big was the first person he called for help to help him get rid of an illegal gun, essentially, which he would have caught another charge for.
Exactly.
Got it.
Right.
So basically, after the shooting, Tupac and Biggie were still on good terms.
On good terms.
Got it. Well, Tupac ends up getting locked up for the sexual assault case. He goes to prison. This is 1995. Meanwhile, you guys dropped the Junior Mafia Conspiracy album, which is on Undias/Big Beat.
Yes.
Distributed by Atlantic.
Yeah.
Album goes gold in a month. Number 8 on Billboard, 69,000 copies the first week.
Which is more than ready to die the first week.
Oh, so by that time, Big was already a big name, so you had that. Big was on every song except for...
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Big was on every song except for I Need You Tonight featuring Aaliyah.
Right.
So he's all over this album. Player's Anthem was a huge song. Get Money, huge song. Lil Kim featured on both songs. You direct the videos.
Yes.
This kind of sets up Lil Kim for her own solo album. So things are going great for you guys.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Tupac is in prison for a sexual assault case. While he's locked up, Biggie drops Who Shot You? Now, from what I understand, that song was recorded before the actual shooting at Quad. But based on the timing of it and the words in it, a lot of people started to think that Who Shot You was about Tupac. I remember being on the West Coast and being around a bunch of street guys and them like, man, fuck that Who Shot You shit. They talking about Pac and rah, rah, rah. Like people were fired up about it. And no one was really there really addressing it at the time. Big at that point didn't say, no, it's not about Tupac or anything else like that. Things were just kind of riding as is. While Pac is locked up, Suge Knight steps in and signs him to death row while he's still in prison. And we don't quite know the story behind this because there's different versions of it, but Suge and possibly the label, Interscope and whoever else come up with the money to bail Tupac out of jail while he's basically fighting the case. I guess they're trying to work on an appeal for his case. So now Tupac is out. Then the Source Awards happens. You were there.
Yes.
It's happening in New York.
Yes. Well, Tupac wasn't there.
Tupac wasn't there yet.
No. Tupac was still locked up because they had the cardboard cutout of Tupac.
Exactly. He's still locked up, but everyone in hip hop is there.
Yeah.
Bad Boy's there. Wu-Tang is there, who you guys are beefing with at the time. And Death Row is there. And this was when Suge Knight famously got on stage and said, any artists out there that want to be an artist and stay a star, you don't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all up in the videos, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row, which was a direct shot at Puffy. Everyone started booing in the audience, I remember. Everyone caught what was happening. You guys are actually there. When you heard that on stage, how'd you feel?
I wanted to go out there and fuck Suge up like everybody else. That's what I wanted to do. I'm telling you, I grew up I was a terrorist, right? I was a bad kid. Like I was gold. Like for the family, I would put my life on the line, right? When that statement was made, it was so much other stuff going on. Like we had beef with Wu-Tang at the time, right? Everybody was armed to the teeth, right? I'm talking about it was all kinds of weapons, drug dealer, murderers, kidnappers. Everybody was armed to the teeth. But one thing is that when he said what he said, everybody who was in that building was from the East Coast. Wu-Tang, everybody. And you know who saved their lives that night? Biggie. Biggie was the only person who saved their lives because everybody was ready to tear into these guys that night. The whole building would have had a piece of them that night. And Big was like, no, that's not going to happen. And that's the only reason. There was no, what Puff and them follow up to it was going on stage. No, it was Biggie who stopped it because it was such a out of nowhere, all of this stuff. And then we started to realize that this was about marketing and promotions. We knew that you guys are just actors, so it just, from that point on, it was crazy.
Well, what was the beef between Suge and Puff up to that point? Was there something that led up to that between Suge and Puff?
So I tell people this all the time. If you want to find any kind of what was over between two men, if you dig really deep, you'll find that there's either money involved or a woman.
Usually a woman.
90% of the times it's a woman involved.
Right. What wasn't there like an alleged photo of Suge with Puffy's baby mother and the baby or something?
These are the things that, like
saying,
I said,
like the West Coast will take care of what the East Coast can, and things got personal and testy.
See, I come from an era of growing up where there was a thing called bullying. But to us, it was called the dozens, right? Your mama's so fat, shit, mama's so black, right? And if you competed, it was rite to passage, right? So, but how much can you take, right? So when hip hop started, it started from the DJ, right? Battling against another DJ. And the MC was the guy who was hyping up the DJ, right? That's his only job, was to hype up the DJ in the crowd, right? So, but it was a competition. So now you take rapping, MCing, and it's all competitive, right? And with all up in the videos, and yes, Puff was all up in the videos, Jermaine was all up in the videos, but Suge was all up in the videos, right? These guys, once all of the lights, like Kanye and them, like once you get bitten, it's money involved. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. So yes.
Got it. Well, you had mentioned there was literally tons of guns at the Source Awards. Yeah. And because of that, people were getting stuck up that night.
Yeah, it was a lot of people. It was a domino effect from that night, man. Like Brooklyn is sad because, it's I've seen these moments in my career in being in the streets or whatever, where you get this feeling of a darkness comes over the space, right? And you just know that something's gonna happen. And that's the way we were raised, like that intuition, right? So now it was, as a result, it was like I said, everybody was vying for the money, so.
I had heard that Stretch, who died later on, you could trace it back to that night.
Yeah, you could, it's all one story. It's not, everybody tends, we're only one degree of separation from, and like I said, any story that you pick up is going to bump into everything that we're talking about. Whoever talks about it, they're going to, like I said, I just brought up Stretch in the Biggie quad incident, right? So he was a part of Tupac, right? So now it's all of these elements of who done it.
Right. It's a whole cobweb of
who did what, and it's like, who's responsible? So it's, we'll get to the bottom of who it is.
Okay, so the Source Awards thing happens, which kind of set a tone between Bad Boy and Death Row.
Yeah.
But Pac was still in jail when this happened. Pac gets out. Well, first he drops California Love, which ends up becoming a huge single. And All Eyes on Me comes out. Huge album. And then Tupac drops Hit 'Em Up, which actually samples a Junior Mafia record of Get Money. When you guys first heard Hit 'Em Up, what'd you think?
Well, you know, in context of that specific story is at the time when Tupac finally did get out of jail and he, you know, whatever happened with Suge and Interscope, he came home, and at that moment in time, Big was the biggest rapper on the planet, right?
True.
He was huge. I'm talking about he was on fire. He had sold 2 million albums probably at that time. The Mafia was pushing 1 million. Kim was pushing platinum, right? And then we come out, no, Kim's album wasn't even out yet.
Yeah, it wasn't out yet.
Right. It was, the Mafia was doing amazing. So we had this hit record called Get Money, and we had a remix to it. And, you know, all of a sudden Pac comes home and we're at a video shoot and somebody plays Hit 'Em Up for us. And we all looked at each other like, what the fuck just happened? Because, like I said, that record was hot. It was big. And all of a sudden, because me personally, like I said, I'm ready to go to war. I wanted to shoot a video the next day, make a song the next day, and you know, make one of those videos targeting Suge and Death Row. And Big was like, nah, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to even respond.
Well, you said, I think on a DJ Self interview, that Big cried like a baby.
Yeah.
When he heard that record, because the record starts off, listen, there's been diss records in hip hop before. The Bridge is Over was a very scathing, you know, scathing diss record. You know, there's been a long, you know, Busy Bee, Cool Mo D. It goes on and on. But Hit 'Em Up starts off with Pac talking about, I fucked your wife. Which really no one had ever gone that far before.
Yeah.
That's how it starts off. And then from there on in, there's all types of other, you know, things that were said. So it kind of took hip hop, you know, hip hop battling to a new low, I felt. You know what I'm saying? You don't really talk about wives, kids, and so forth. You know, you fast forward 2023, now you're talking about your dead relatives and your kids and whatever. But at that point, that was extremely shocking.
Right.
So that comes out. And what do you think was really the real reason between the beef between Biggie and Pac? Because like you said, Pac called Biggie afterwards to help him get the gun. So they were cool before he went into prison. Now he's out of prison and there's this whole beef thing. What do you think was the real reason behind it?
The real reason was the fact that Biggie was huge. He was huge, and it was all of, like I said, Vlad, Nas, Biggie, and Pac. Those were the top, because Pac, like I said, Pac went to jail, right? He did whatever he did. So now Biggie has staked claim to the king of hip hop, right? I'm the target now. I am the king, right? So now everybody else is like, okay, I got to get back, right? That's what makes 50 so relevant to what he was doing when he took Pac's formula and said, oh, I'm gonna make a hit record and disrespect you on a record, right? That's what rap is. Rap has always been artists battling for the number one spot. It's all in the part of the game.
Yeah.
Who's number one?
C's said that Big told everyone in the crew, if you make a record, I'm not fucking with you. In terms of a response record to Pac. He said, don't call me, don't fuck with me if you respond to anything. So none of us could do it. And Junior Mafia was ready to respond. Lil Kim was ready to respond. Big was like, nah, we're not doing that. Because C's felt that Big was trying to leave the door open to actually making it right with Tupac, according to C's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mafia, we like, oh, we gotta do it, bro. We about to respond to this shit, my nigga. And Big heard it, and Big was like, all right, you know, he was pissed, but then he was like, if anybody do a record responding to that shit, don't bother calling me, don't bother coming around me. I will not fuck with you if any of y'all do a record to this. Cause you know, Junior Mafia got their own art. They rap, he like, yo, you do that shit, I'm not fucking with you. I just think Big total intentions was like, yeah, he was heated about it, but you know, his thing was, I want to get up with this dude.
Big and Pac didn't have no beef, man. Like I said, going back to Quad Studio, you know, the way people turn the story around, you know, I told you that Pac had a beef with Jimmy Henchman, was coming we didn't invite Pac to the studio. He showed up to the studio. We was on the 6th floor. They were on the 8th floor. It was a 10th floor to the studio. It was just chance that we were all in the same building. Now, all of a sudden, Pac comes home from prison and he takes a shot. See, the problem with it, and I don't care who you are, if somebody takes a shot at one of these rappers today's wife, they're gonna feel a certain way because it's like, if somebody came and told you, yo, I slept with your wife, you're gonna be like, what? Right. What do you mean? Right? So now Big's looking at that, he loved Faith. He's like, what are you talking about? But what was Big's response to that? If Faith have twins, she probably have Tupac.
Right, yeah. So on Jay-Z's album, Reasonable Doubt, there's a song called Brooklyn's Finest, which Biggie shows up on. And Biggie had the line, gotta go, Coolio, I mean, it's getting too hot. If Faye had twins, she'd probably have two Pacs. Get it? Two Pacs. So he was playing with it.
He was playing with it. That's what rap was. That's what these guys were great at subliminals or direct, indirect, you know.
So the Source Awards thing happens. That set the tone. Hit 'em Up happens. That really made it clear in terms of the lines that were set. And then at long last, you guys actually run into each other at the Soul Train Awards.
Yes.
You're there.
Yes.
What actually happened when you guys ran into each other?
When we first got to LA, right? Because it was beef. We knew we had beef, right? So rap beef. Because I didn't take any of these rappers seriously, right? But I was there to make sure that nobody did anything to Big, right? So when we land, Jacob puts together an itinerary, and we're always security first because we're from the streets. The way we move, this is Big. We gotta protect Big, right? At all costs, right? We land in LA with our itinerary. Puff meets us at the airport. He says to me, you take everybody else and y'all go to your hotel. Big's gonna go with me. I said, no, Puff. Big's gonna go with me. And you tell me what time Big has to be at the Soul Train Awards, and I'll have him there, right? He argued, fuss. Big knew I'm in charge. So we leave Puff, right? Morning of the Soul Train Awards. We get there, Big's backstage, his shoes is too small. I get in a limo, just go outside randomly, get in someone's limo, And I go searching all in South Central LA looking for a size 13 triple E shoe for Big, right? By the time I get back with these shoes, Big is coming down in the cage, right? And I'm saying, well, what shoes do he got on? And then I realized he got on security shoes and he's on the back heels of them, right? After the show, we're in the audience, right? And all of a sudden, I'm looking around and I see a bunch of Bloods had us surrounded. Bunch of Bloods, right? They were seated all strategically around us. I'm saying, fuck. Yo, y'all know how we moving. We done prep this thing already, how we getting up out of here. So all of a sudden, the show's over. It's time for us to go. We're outside like everybody else waiting for their limos. All of a sudden, I look around. Outside of the gate, it's a bunch of Bloods. Right? They outside the gate. I'm saying, fuck. All of a sudden, we see these two Hummers pull into the parking lot. Tupac is in the window. Yelling out the window, hanging out the window. Yeah, west side, best side. So everybody go in the motion. I do what I do. I step in front of Big, right? Because you got to kill me before you get to Big, right? You got to kill all my niggas before you even get to me and Big. Gutter standing there with, he pulls out the gun. Suge's the person you shoot first.
You tell him that.
Yes. So now all of a sudden, Suge starts saying he got a strap. He starts telling on Gutter. I'm looking at Suge like, this nigga's telling. You, all of a sudden, he's not the big Suge Knight anymore, right? Because this is my really first encounter. I'm not taking Tupac serious because I'm saying these guys are friends. Him and C's are arguing. Right? He's like, get out my face, C's. C's like this, he banging back at Tupac. And I'm saying, and I'm just standing in front of Big like this, right? So all of a sudden, I hear somebody and I hear my brother just calling me. And I turn around, Jacob and them done got Big, everybody in the limo. And I'm standing there just looking at Suge like, I can't believe you just did that. Don Cornelius came outside and said, I don't give a fuck what limo y'all get in. I think we got in like Barry Weiss limo and Teddy Riley's limo, and we found all they shit, and we went right to the airport. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what the plan was. Leave the Saucer Wars. While we on the Saucer War, on our way to the airport, we hear Tupac and Suge on the radio talk about they just ran us out of LA, and we like, no, that was a part of our plan. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I was there, and that's what we did. We got Big home safe. You know, every experience. When we left in those limos, our itinerary, we was getting ready to go do A&T in Greensboro, North Carolina. So we had a 9:00 flight booked. We was already booked to leave up out of there. Mm-hmm. So we made our way to the airport, you know, so we didn't get ran out of LA. You know, everybody changes the story based on their experiences. Like I said, at that moment, we were all just looking at Tupac like, Pac, what is this act? You know, because it's funny because everybody says that, you know, I was around Big, right? I was responsible for this kid. Financially, we was business partners, you know, but I've never met Tupac. I was going to meet Tupac the night in that studio because we just so happened to be there, and C said, yo, Tupac's downstairs. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to meet this kid for the first time. Right? Because I've heard about him. Big used to talk about him. Yo, wait till you meet Pac. He a good dude, blah, blah. You know, and I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I knew him from Juice and Digital Underground. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, Pac. You know, so, but it was the sort, that day was the beginning of me really starting to take it serious about LA, right? Because they showed me that they were in control, right? They could have done something to us if they wanted to do it, right? We were outgunned, we were outmanned, but we were, like 300, like we was ready to die to get him out of there. So, but those are the things that, in hindsight,
So that situation happened at the Soul Train Awards. And then Biggie and Puffy did a Vibe article. And there was a cover shoot with Biggie and Puffy on the cover, and Vibe put East versus West on that cover. And that was the first time it was framed that way. I remember when I interviewed Tretch, who was very close to Tupac, he blamed Vibe for the official East versus West beef because it was never that. It was just a couple people who were beefing from each other that just happened to be on opposite coasts. But it now ballooned into a whole thing of artists from both sides are now beefing with each other because it's framed this way.
You know what killed Pac and Big? Let's get some real shit right here. 'Cause I might not have too much longer because I don't give a fuck. After they died, I died with them. I'm here haunting niggas with the truth. When you got that motherfucking Vibe magazine, right? When you see Big and Puff on the cover, East versus West. When I saw that fucking cover, I said, man, what the fuck is going on? Gangsters don't read articles. Niggas on the East Coast like, yo, it's on. Wait till them West Coast niggas come out here. West Coast like, oh, it's on. Wait till them East Coast niggas come out here. So it baited up a whole shit that fucking went down that had just so many cycles of all Biggie followers and riders, all Pac riders, motherfuckers that ain't even know neither one of them, gangster ass motherfuckers. It could have really turned into a motherfucking East Coast, West Coast war.
Well, I mean, that's what, at the time, like I said, it's just too many, coincidences. It's coincidence that, the Vibe did Tupac's interview from prison. It's a coincidence that they painted the first East Coast, West Coast. It's a coincidence that he died at a Vibe party.
Yeah.
So you
a lot of things going on.
Coincidences on Food Street, you'll see all of these things being put together.
Yeah.
It'll make sense.
Well, Biggie is working on his second album, Life After Death. And while he's doing that, Tupac gets killed in Las Vegas. And, I've interviewed Keefy D, who was in the car, that essentially shot at Tupac's car. So that story is out there. Biggie was actually in the studio recording the song Nasty Girl when he got the call that Tupac got killed. You weren't in the studio with him at the time.
No.
But Faith Evans actually talked about that night. She said that Biggie called her first. And she said, I think it's fair to say he was probably afraid, given anything that was going on at the time and all the hype that was put on the so-called beef, that he didn't really have his heart against anyone. She said he was really shook up over that whole situation. And you guys actually had a conversation afterwards.
Yeah, it was, I had I was sleeping and Tupac, I guess he came into a dream that I was having. And I heard some lyrics in that dream, and I told Big what those lyrics were. I said, yo, listen to this. I was thinking about Tupac, and I said, you're nobody till somebody kills you. And he was like, I'm using that. And that was his thing. Like, he always challenged me on, that's whack, that's horrible. But if you gave him, and he was like that with his crew, everybody, like, I'm using that. Like, that's, but so one day I came to the studio and he was like, yo, play that song for Un. And he played that song for me and it sent chills down my body. Like, cause it fit so perfectly, at the time. But it was like him, poetic justice, you know, in a sense, you know, where it's like art imitating life when it came to him. You know, it's like, okay, where do we go from here? You know, and he was distraught, you know, and he was distraught because they never mended. You know, Pac said things that we can do it for charity, right? That was his last posture statements when he felt like, okay, I'm back at number one, right? Right before that, when it was West Coast, when he was riding on Nas, J, everybody. He wrote on everybody, right? So
Mobb Deep.
He wrote on everybody, right? So it was, you know, once he felt that, he started saying what his future plans were. You know, like I said, Suge and him was in the way of what this kid's real heart was. You know, he used it as a tool because he was an artist. He was from a kid, you know, he was raised by revolutionaries in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. So he had that in him, but he was an artist, you know, so he was digital underground, and he was the best at being digital underground, even if it was just him wearing a dashiki.
Right.
In the video.
He was a great actor.
He was a great actor.
He used to be a backup dancer.
He was everything artistic.
Yeah.
Right? So now all of a sudden, nobody is taking you serious because you go from Versace, Yana stole my style, Pac, you from Baltimore by way of California. You don't have a Versace Gator style. You emulating the 90s drug dealers, because that's what we were. Big didn't even have it. We had it as the drug dealers, right? So no, you didn't even wear Rolexes, Pac. You started it because you became an actor and you were for a role, right? You became, right? The same way it was easy for you to go to prison, come home and wear khakis, and now you became a representative of those guys, right? The West Coast. So
yeah. Okay, so Tupac passes away, and a couple months later, Lil Kim's debut album, Hardcore, comes out under Undies Entertainment. No Time and Crush on You and Not Tonight were the singles. All big hits. The album did well. It went platinum.
Yes.
So now you got a hit. Well, you have another hit under your hands. After Junior Mafia, now Lil Kim. 2 home runs under Undies Entertainment, which you are partners with on Biggie.
Yes.
Okay, so we fast forward 1997. Biggie is getting ready to release his second album. They do the Hypnotize video. I guess right around that time, you know, Big was dating Charlie Baltimore. And we'd interviewed Lil C's about this. I guess Big had taken some pictures with him with some girls in the hotel room. He had asked C's to get rid of the photos. C's forgot to get rid of the photos. Charlie Baltimore finds the photos, loses their shit. Big, huge domestic disturbance. I guess Big stopped talking to C's for a while over that whole situation.
He kept telling me to take this bag out the room for like 2-3 days. Yo, Charlie about to come in. Get that bag out of here. You know, stolen. All right, when I go downstairs, take it. You know, we go out, do shit. Bag still up there. Next day, same old shit. And one day I was downstairs, and she must have got there. And I just remember D-Rock banging on my door, like, yo, come on, I need you to come upstairs, help me pack his shit. I'm like, pack his shit for what? He's like, yo, we got to get out of here, dog. Shit went down upstairs. I'm like, what? He's like, yo, Charlie went in that bag. Her and Big got into it. She threw the nigga ring over the window. She was throwing juices at him. I come in the room, it's wild fucking cranberry juice, all type of shit on the walls.
Damn.
He like, yo, your man had to rush out. I had to get him up out of here, though. He out here, no shoes on, No nothing, shirtless. What the fuck did I do?
But ultimately, things are still moving ahead in a very positive direction. I mean, everyone's waiting for the second Biggie album. And Biggie was putting together the commission at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You were actually supposed to be part of the commission.
Yeah, I was Uncle Paulie in the commission. Yeah.
And Jay was the key member.
Well,
I mean, there's other key members, but I'm saying Big and Jay was sort of the...
No? Puffy, P. Diddy was huge, man. Where you put Jay... Oh, you can't put Jay. At that moment, it was Biggie, right? Remember there was levels to Pac being here.
Yeah.
Right? And then he did going to jail, and then he come home and Big is here, right? And then it was Nas.
Yeah.
Right? There was no Jay.
Well, Reasonable Doubt was out by this time.
There's 2 million albums, Biggie, number one records.
Reasonable Doubt became a classic kind of later on.
200,000 albums versus 2 million versus what 2 million Pac was doing versus million Nas was doing.
Right. Okay. Well, but the commission was supposed to come together with Biggie and Jay in it. And I guess there was a bit of a discussion about what label is going to come out on. Whether it's going to come out on Rockefeller or
me
Diaz.
and Dame used to argue over who was going to get the commission album, right? So now Biggie's plan was, Biggie had this thing about breaking artists through music and dropping names and what his creative vision was moving forward, right? So now he had a plan of breaking Charlie Baltimore, Jay-Z, whatever Un was going to do. He was going to commission, really started from More Money, More Problems was a record that Puff played for me at the 112 remix video shoot with Mace. Biggie was helping to break Mace at the time, right? Like he was breaking every artist Puffy had, right? We'll get to that story soon about how difficult Puff was and what Big was helping to break Craig Mack, Faith, Total, Mace. Big was rapping on every single, right? Yeah. So he was introducing all of these people. Same way he tried to introduce Jay with Brooklyn's Finest. Mm-hmm. And Irv tells a story about he talked to Jay about, why you rapping with Big? Big's huge, right? Yeah. So everybody argues with me, and I'm not taking, we're going to get to Jay and his climb, but.
Well, on the song What's Beef that came out later on, he said the commission, Uncle Paulie, you, P. Diddy, Cesareo, DeGeneiro, Charlie Baltimore, Iceberg Slim. Who's Iceberg Slim?
Jay-Z.
Oh, that's Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. So he's basically laying out
what the roster of the group is, right?
Got it.
So he started dropping records in the commission. You asked for permission to hit him.
Yeah.
He started name dropping what his vision was. It was so at that moment, like I said, Big was huge.
Well, I remember right around that time, I did an interview with Gene Deal, and he talked about how he had a conversation with Big, and Big showed him a contract for like $62 million, saying that Big was getting ready to leave Bad Boy, and he had all these other huge deals on the table and so forth.
Mm-hmm. He said, but I'm about to get this money. So he showed me, I said, you about to get that money? He said, yeah, look at this. It had Charlie Baltimore, Cameron, Little C's, Lil Kim, Junior Mafia, Tracy Murray,
Tracy Lee,
and the commission. And I think the contract was for so many years for like 62 million. It comes out to like $62 million.
And that's actually true. He had a bunch of deals on the table.
Well,
whether or not he was going to leave Bad Boy or not, but he still had a lot of deals on the table.
He had the opportunity to do whatever he wanted to do at that moment in time. He had proven himself. Mm-hmm. We were having the discussions about what his future plan, what our business plans were moving forward based on the success that we were having. So yeah, it was we were battling the charts. Biggie was battling himself on the charts at that time. Mafia versus Biggie. But it was for the benefits of what we were doing.
Yeah.
You know, when I tell people all the time, Big was a great A&R.
Well, then March 9th came around.
Mm-hmm.
Biggie and his crew were in LA.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to go to the vibe party.
Mm-hmm.
The party got too crowded, and we've done interviews with Gene Deal and C's and everyone else around this. Everyone decides to leave.
Mm-hmm.
A car pulls up and opens fire.
Mm-hmm.
Biggie ends up getting shot.
Mm-hmm.
They take him to the hospital, and he's pronounced dead
Mm-hmm.
at the hospital. When did you get the phone call?
I had a conversation with Biggie 3 hours before he died. The conversation was, don't leave the room. Don't go. Puff's trying to get me to go to this party. Don't leave the room. Get on a plane and go to London in the morning. He promised me that he wouldn't leave the room. I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm waiting for Heather Hunter and Janet Jackson. At that time, they were the biggest porn stars on the planet. And I'm so envious. I'm like, fuck. And we just going to smoke out until it's time for me to leave in the morning. So I say, you know, he like, yo, love you, bro. You know, he hangs up the phone. 3 hours after that conversation, D-Rock called me crying and said, Big's dead. And I keep over and over saying, you wasn't supposed to leave the room, bro. You know, and if I had to do it all over and relive it all over, I would probably say the only thing that I would change is I would have got on that plane March 7th and been out there, because he wouldn't have died. Because you'll see that I stood in front of him every time under all those conditions. And I fought. Everybody tells this story about Big and how, you know, I heard we weren't under that kind of pressure. We, you know, it was all good. I've heard all of these statements. But at that moment in time, me and him every single day, it was be safe. Don't go out. Just do the work. Because they talked me out of going. Because I wanted to go and I couldn't figure out why. Why? We know what we up against. It's so much that happened during that time. It's, you know, it's the world knew Big shouldn't have been in LA. It's somebody dropped the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Gene Deal didn't want him to go out. He actually said in our interview that he got a call from Mecca Audio telling him not to go. And we interviewed Mecca, who confirmed this phone call.
His people told me there was a hit on Biggie, so whatever it was. So now I was cool with a CO in there, so I get the phone and I made a 3-way call, which I wasn't allowed to because I could have lost my phone and got started over in the whole program behind that. But I get on the phone and I call this girl and I tell her to call Gene because I know she was in touch with Gene and I know Gene is reputable, you know, Big Gene, and he gonna get the word out there. So I told, you know, I just called and said, yo, tell him to vest up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that he know what time it is. You know what I mean? Ain't no whole bunch to say, tell him to vest up. You know, don't go to Cali, nigga. It's on, you know? They done turned it to another level, you know? So it was only right when I heard something like that for me to let him know as a man, and I jeopardized everything, you know what I mean, by making that phone call, you know what I mean? But I had to make that phone call. That was my duty, you know what I mean? As a man, when I hated the comrades, you know what I mean, life could be in danger.
I remember in the interview with C's, you know, we were talking about how when they finally heard the news that Biggie had passed away, it was like, who's going to tell Big's mom? And D-Rock was the one that volunteered to make that phone call. So in the same way that he called you, he called Biggie's mom, which I'm sure was a much more difficult phone call.
Listen, I had to drive her to the airport that morning and put her on the plane to go to LA to get her son.
What state was she in?
It was horrible, man.
Like she only had one child. This was her only child.
Her only child, you know, and it's unfair that she has no closure to it. And, you know, it's unfair about all of the conspiracies of it all, you know, about how, you know, there's nobody to give her comfort in what happened to her son. And she needs clarity. She needs to find out what really transpired. And she did a lot. She's still on their head, you know, and it's weird because what people don't realize is that they did a thorough investigation on Big thus far that they say, but no one's ever asked me anything about Big's death.
You never got questioned. Jacob York, who's here right now in the room, he never got questioned.
Lil Kim's never been questioned.
Got questioned.
But they claim to have done a thorough investigation. And I was Big's business partner. Everybody knows what I was for Big, right? No one asks, was anybody threatening y'all? Did y'all owe anybody money? And I'm sitting here saying, but they said that they were concerned about who killed Big. And at some point, I'm like, well, you know, all of these stories about $60 million, you let the world tell the story. I got $64 million after Big died, right? So wouldn't somebody, the FBI, so they say, was investigating, wouldn't somebody say, hey, was anything going on? And I'm saying nobody cared to ask me anything, no magazine at that time, Source, Vibe. The only thing people were concerned about is me and Jay.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, ultimately, Miss Wallace sued the LAPD. It ended up getting dismissed. I've talked to a lot of people, you know, like when it comes to...
Yeah, but it only got dismissed based on the LAPD doing their own internal investigation, and that investigation came back to say there wasn't no cops involved.
Right.
So now, no civil suit, we don't have to pay. It's like, fuck you, prove some shit. Right. You know what I'm saying? But y'all claim, y'all done did movies with Forrest Whitaker and Johnny Depp about the thorough investigation. And at some point, I'm saying, when was we not the people who you should have started with?
Well, when it comes to the Tupac murder, I can confidently say who did it or who was in the vicinity of where it happened. The Keefe D story, the first Keefe D interview essentially laid out the story and all the pieces fit together, right? Mm-hmm. Between Keefe D's story, you know, Idi Amin, who was in the car behind him, Chris Carroll, the first responder, everything fits together. We know why Tupac died. It was over the MGM incident and it was retaliation over that. Mm-hmm. When it comes to Biggie's murder, I am not confident in terms of who did it. I interviewed Mob James, who was, you know, the head of Death Row's street security. You know, he was the one that brought all the Bloods into Death Row. He thinks it was a guy named Poochie, who was a Blood, who was associated with Suge, who's known as a shooter and a killer, who's now dead. When you hear the theory that Poochie was the shooter, what is your take on it?
Right on.
Was Poochie known as a shooter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a hitter for real, for real.
Okay. So doing something like this would not be out of character.
Not at all. Now that he's dead, I mean, everybody can speak on it and whatever now. I'm surprised they haven't came and said they know who did it. But the hood talks. Everybody know who was doing what, especially when it comes around death row. So, yeah, everybody knew who did it, why it was done. And, you know, some cats are still applauding the fact that it happened because we lost Tupac. So just in retaliation of that, you know, it is what it is. That's how they felt.
Okay, so in terms of the streets talking and the rumors, is Poochie the name that comes up more often than not?
That's it.
Okay. So if you were to bet,
I win a lot of goddamn money.
You know, if you were to bet Poochie or Amir Muhammad or the government,
I'll win a lot of goddamn money.
Okay, but by betting on Poochie.
Yes, sir. Man, come on, this is street shit. This war was going on between Death Row and Bad Boy.
Right, because if it was ultimately proven that Poochie was the one who did it, then that ties Suge Knight into that conspiracy.
Yes.
I remember Theo, you know, the radio DJ called me up one day and said, oh, it's this one cop with LAPD. We looked into it. There's no actual proof of any of this. So right now in 2023, I honestly, as much as I know and as many people as I speak to, I honestly don't know who killed Biggie. Do you feel like you know who killed Biggie?
Yeah.
Can you say it?
No, I'm going to tell it on the series.
Okay. But you feel confident you know who did it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I did my research.
Okay.
And stop blaming Suge, because nowhere in Suge's story has always been beat them niggas up, fuck them niggas up, drag them niggas, beat their ass. There's no, in this story, there's no kill him, shoot him. Niggas was shooting Suge.
Well, but you know, the thinking was, hey, I lost my big artist.
Nah,
I'm gonna make you lose your big artist.
Nah, Suge is y'all painting these characters. Suge was, all these guys was puppets, scapegoats. Bigger plays were involved with them when it came to this hundreds and billions of dollars in money, man.
Okay. Well, Biggie passes away, and there was a huge funeral procession in Brooklyn. Like nothing anyone's ever seen. You were there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was one of his pallbearers.
You were one of the pallbearers.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
That was a loss. But at least you got to see Brooklyn celebrate.
But I seen Brooklyn celebrate from the first record.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like from the first song at the radio, Brooklyn was there. The tunnel.
Yeah.
One thing, we go to the tunnel, they say, how many with y'all? All of them. And Big would stay by the front of the door until the whole Brooklyn got into the tunnel.
Love it. Okay, so Biggie passes away. Junior Mafia is still a group. But I guess Puffy said that he would take care of them. So they sort of went with Puff at that point, hoping that Puffy would kind of keep their momentum going.
Well, I don't know verbatim what Puffy said or did with them. I just know my relationship with them and Puffy and Atlantic at the time. It was the belief was Biggie's no longer here. We believe that Puff can do a better job than you. And that was me having to do Ladies Night post-Biggie.
Yeah. Right, because Junior Mafia never came out with another album. I mean, they did decades later, but in terms of Junior Mafia as a group, essentially it was a wrap.
Well, see, it was only a wrap because because the way our contract was structured at the time is that there were separate options to the Snakes album, Klepto's album, Lil Kim's album, Little Caesar's album. See, Big was setting Caesar's album up through Kim's album, through Players Anthem and the Mafia's album. Kim was up next, C's, then the Sixes was up after that, then Clep, then, the Sixes, right?
But that didn't actually happen, unfortunately.
But it should have happened, unfortunately, because that was Biggie's plan.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, those options were there.
Right. And then Lil Kim, she ends up going with Puffy for management.
For management.
Right.
Right? So now all of a sudden it becomes a, okay, I had a conversation with Kim and I told her what me and Big's plan was moving forward. If he had made it back, renegotiation, all his business that we talked to, because I was his only business partner. He was Puff's artist. I was his business partner in all of the business that he was doing. I said, Kim, this is what Big wanted for everybody. He wanted the Commission album. He wanted New Junior Mafia, Lil Kim, everybody, right? That was his plan. She said, I want to go and I want a chance to become my own person. I signed off on her getting Queen Bee Records. She ended up saying, I want to executive produce Caesar's album because Caesar originally, I didn't want nobody to mess the album up. So we were going to take him out of Atlantic. But Kim was like, no, I want to do his album. I want to do the next Junior Mafia album. And I want to do my album. And Puff's going to executive produce it. So I signed off on the checks and all of that. And I said, okay, Craig, you don't want to do what me and Big's plan was? He said, no, I'm going to follow Puff's lead. And we turned around, went and did a deal for Cam and Charlie Baltimore, which is what Big wanted.
Right, because Lil Kim drops Not Tonight with Left Eye, Missy, The Brat, and Angie Martinez. That ends up being a huge hit. You actually launched Entertainment, and that's when you signed Cameron. Biggie was a fan of Cameron.
Yes.
Before he passed and wanted to sign him. And I guess you saw Cameron at a video shoot. Was it We'll Always Love Big Papa?
Yeah.
And he approached you and you basically said, I'm signing you because Big wanted to sign you. So now you signed Cameron, you signed Charlie Baltimore. You also signed Dutch and Spade of Major Figures. I guess you tried to sign Beanie Siegel.
I tried to sign the whole group, the whole Gilly, everybody.
Yeah.
I was in the game. I tried to sign Mace. I tried to sign Shine.
Murder Inc.
Yeah. I tried to sign everybody. I tried to sign Cash Money. It was too much money. Jacob was bringing me everything. Ludacris, everybody. We had a shot at everybody. We was just, they didn't fund us the right way.
Right. Because in 98, well, first you guys dropped the soundtrack to the film Woo under Entertainment. And then Cameron's first album comes out, Confessions of Fire.
While the industry was saying unfinished.
Right, because
Biggie's dead.
Yeah.
Right? So all of a sudden, we ship a gold album on a brand new artist out of nowhere, right? This artist that Dame Dash in Freeze Record didn't know what to do with Cameron, right? He was signed to Freeze Records with Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt, right? So we had to buy Cam out of his Freeze contract, right? And blew him up.
Right. And well, on that same album, Confessions of Fire, was the song Horse and Carriage.
Yes.
Which Mace was on.
Yes.
Mace was supposed to show up in the music video, and I guess wanted to charge Cameron like $25,000 or something, and Cameron got insulted, and that sort of set off the Dipset Mace beef that went on for
Well, what
decades.
actually happened is that at the time when Big was helping to break Mace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Puff signed Mace. So can you imagine what kind of contract Mace got? Right? Because Big just came off that same contract, right? The Locks, all of them came off the same contracts, right? So Mace, with Big rapping with Mace on the 112 remix, Mace is broke. So Big says, give Mace a check and he's gonna write for C's, right? He's gonna write records for C's. Mace comes back with a record called Crush on You for Little C's album. This was a Little C's Big paying unpaid Mace. I think we paid him $50,000, $7,500 a record, right? He made 6 records, right? So he comes back with Crush on You. It's 3 verses with Little C's on it. That record is by the time it was time to finish Kim's album, I say, Big says, put the version with Little C's version on Kim's album, and because we're gonna help break, C's, and put a Snakes song on there to set up this. That's the only records, right? So now the original album that we shipped, Kim wasn't even on Crush on You. It was all C's for 3 verses.
Right. And Big is doing the chorus.
And Big is doing the chorus. Yeah. On the original 500,000 albums, I think we shipped on Kim.
And then you switch it up to the Kim version.
And then we did a remix.
Oh.
1,000,000 albums.
1,000,000 albums. Without Kim. And then Kim rapped on the record. She wrote her own verses. Mm-hmm. And Big said, come up with an idea for the video, Crush on You. The first video, Big was going to direct it. He was going to play all of the he's going to play different characters. And he had this dance he used to call the bum bitch. He said, I'm going to be doing the bum bitch, trying to lock C's up as Martin, the cop from Martin, right? So I come up with the idea for Crush on You. He said, that's the video.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's how.
Right. And of course, before then, after Big passed, the Life After Death album comes out.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, I did some polls. Most people felt that Life After Death was a better album than Ready to Die. Would you agree?
I think that there was growth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He took it to another level. And that's what artists do.
Yeah.
They get better.
I mean, 2 great albums. I like them both for personal reasons.
Yeah.
I personally can't choose between the 2,
Yeah.
but they're both great.
Yeah, but you hear the growth, though.
Yeah. Okay. And then in 1999, Lil C's drops his solo album Under Indias through Lil Kim's deal.
Lil Kim's deal.
Right.
Which was all Puffy and Kim.
Yeah, you were involved in that album, right? And actually, there was
was sign the check.
Yeah, Jay-Z shows up on that album on one song.
Yeah.
There's no Biggie verses on that album though.
Mm-mm.
By that time, I guess because Big wasn't, like these artists that have thousands of songs.
Mm-hmm.
He focused on the songs he focused on. So,
but that's not true. I did a clip I did a special for Notorious Radio on Sirius XM.
Mm-hmm.
And through my research, I found 5 hours of Biggie verses.
Really?
5 hours of music of Biggie verses.
That never got released.
That got released. See, what people don't understand is Biggie had more verses than he gave everybody verses.
No, you're right. Yeah, he showed up on everyone's shit.
So he had a body.
Luke, he had a body the Rugged Man. Work. Yeah, he had a lot of stuff out
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so he put in his work. You know, he just didn't have his own catalog. You know, Puff ended up with all of those verses.
Yeah.
You know,
Afterlife after
yeah,
death.
but he had literally 5 hours of music.
So then comes the Jay-Z situation. So you actually knew Jay-Z before the music industry.
Yes.
In what regard?
I mean, you know, from the streets.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you guys actually done any drug business together yourselves?
We were, you know, through my upper echelon. Yeah. It's with Brooklyn thing.
Got it. Okay. So Jay-Z is preparing for his next album, Life and Times of S. Carter, Volume 3.
Mm-hmm.
A month and a half before the album gets officially released, it gets leaked.
Mm-hmm.
Jay spoke about the situation in his book, Decoded.
Mm-hmm.
He said, when Volume 3 hit the streets more than a month before the official release date, I was totally at a loss.
Mm-hmm.
This was really too much. I was slipping out on Def Jam staff, accusing people of having something to do with the bootleg copies of The Street. I just couldn't believe how flagrant it was and how much more damaging it could be than the usual low-level bootlegging. I want to know how my shit got out. People kept giving me the same name as the source of the bootlegging. It was someone I knew, someone I never would have suspected. And he's talking about you.
Mm.
So, the night of the incident, before he actually got to Q-Tip's party, Jay had a listening event for Volume 3. He was there, Beanie Siegel was there, Emil, Memphis Bleak. He performed a few records on stage, and Dame Dash got on the microphone and was like, fuck the bootleggers. So there was already kind of an air of this kind of thing. So then Q-Tip is having his actual party for his solo album
Mm-hmm.
at the Kit Kat Club in Times Square.
Mm-hmm.
You were there. Puffy was there. Lil Kim was there. Lil C's was there. Busta Rhymes was there. Murder Inc. was all over the building. Supreme was actually there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where there's different versions of this story have been floating around. So you're at the party. Jay-Z comes in
Mm-hmm.
with his crew. What happens next?
I mean, what happened that night?
Yeah.
Was he came in with, I seen everybody that you just named at the party. Regular industry. I think Jacob and Jessica threw that party for Q-Tip. So I showed up to support. Jay, bunch of us is in there. I ended up getting surrounded by a bunch of people. It was it was probably 10 knives that I knew of, and I ended up getting stabbed at the Kit Kat Club.
Was Jay-Z the one that actually stabbed you?
No, Jay-Z was not the guy who actually stabbed me that night.
But Jay-Z was there when you got stabbed. Was actually in front of you when you got stabbed.
It was like, yeah, me and Jay-Z had a conversation while, right before I got hit in the head with a champagne bottle. And it was a brief conversation, and I was looking at him like, what are you talking about? And you fucking the money up right now.
Well, what did he tell you?
He just kept saying, you broke my heart. You broke my heart. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're bugging right now, bro. You getting ready to fuck up everything. And, and I don't know where people got Jay-Z stabbed me from, because if anybody knows Jay-Z, Jay-Z's a nice guy, right? He's an artist. He's a poet. He's gifted. And it's never been his history. You know, if Jay-Z had stabbed me, y'all wouldn't have got the Black Album, you know, because through my whole history, I'm a eye for an eye type of guy, you know. Unfortunately, I got stabbed that night, but the reality to it is, you know, Nas, you know, and I don't know why didn't nobody believe him. On Ether, he said, talked about the incident, you know, like he let people know, like, yo, your man stabbed on you, you took the blame for it, you know, and unfortunately, you know, he was caught up in a power struggle, you know, it was all about the power to, you know, to get rid of Dame Dash, you know, and take Jay-Z to the next level without Dame, you know, and it was, you know, Dame should stop blaming Leo and Todd Moskowitz and start blaming Steve Stout.
Okay, where exactly did you get stabbed?
I got stabbed in the back.
In the back?
Yeah.
Where? Like in
the shoulder.
One stab?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. It wasn't multiple stabbing because the reports were that you were stabbed in the shoulder and the abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
No.
No, just the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you involved in bootlegging Jay-Z's album?
Listen, one thing that I tried to make clear after this secret meeting, right, that went on about the who's gonna make more money, under Jay-Z. A lot of people look at me like I'm crazy when I say that, and I say, no, we were selling a lot of records, hundreds of millions of dollars. We was doing numbers. Jay was struggling. He needed, at the time, Def Jam, this was when, right before they got this $100 million, remember they had to put out all of these records, these double albums. They needed the credibility. Rap was about credibility. You know what I'm saying? This was a perfect opportunity to say, okay, because it is funny how you all of a sudden after the incident, like there's record that after that incident, just behind Jay-Z on the cover of the Daily News in a Rocawear jacket, Rocawear went up 1,100%.
Yeah, everyone bought the jacket.
From the
press conference
because of that. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, there's different accounts of what happened.
mm-hmm.
First of which is Jay-Z's own account in the book Decoded.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what he said. He said, one night I went to Q-Tip's solo album release party, and at some point in the night, I ran into the guy everyone's been telling me is behind the bootleg.
Mm-hmm.
So I approached him.
Mm-hmm.
When I told him what I suspected, to my surprise, he got real loud with me right there in the middle of the club. It was strange. We separated, and I went over to the bar. I was sitting there like, no, the fuck this dude did not just say that.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to people, but I was really talking to myself out loud, just in a state of shock. Before I even realized what I was doing, I headed back over to him, but by this time, I was blacking out with anger.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing I knew, all hell had broken loose in the club. That night, the guy went straight to the police, and I was charged with assault.
Mm-hmm.
So he described like you guys got together and you talked and you got loud with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he separated and came back.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get loud with him?
No, absolutely not. I've never gotten loud with Jay. I've gotten loud with Dame. Dame was the guy that I used to battle with in public and yell and scream because that's what the energy that he gave off.
That's how Dame is. I know.
Jay's a nice guy.
Okay.
Like I said, he's not a yeller, and especially in public.
Yeah. I mean, he's a nice guy, but he was also very much bothered by the situation of the bootleg.
Yeah, but the bootlegging, you got to understand, the biggest bootlegger in the hip-hop game was a guy named DJ Clue, right? Everybody wanted to kill Clue. Every rapper in Rockefeller signed
Right.
the biggest bootlegger in the game at the time. They want to know where it came from. Won't you look at the biggest bootlegger?
Yeah. Well, I got another account of the night from Chris Gotti, who was there. But before I say this, Chris said that you guys are cool. He has no issues with you. He respects you and so forth. But I had he talked about this a little bit in an interview, but I actually called him up and got the details of what happened. So this is what Chris Gotti said. He said he was there the night it happened. Jay-Z walked in the club with a hoodie on. And he saw Jay tuck in his chain. And he was kind of confused by that. He goes like, yo, why are you tucking your chain? I mean, Murder Inc. is here. We got you. You know, you don't have to worry about it. And he goes, no, there's something else. So the first thing he said happened was your brother ended up getting into an altercation. Your brother, Buck. He was there with you? He said that Buck got jumped by a bunch of Rockefeller dudes. Did that happen?
Yeah.
Okay. And he said while that was happening, you were kind of close by, essentially watching it happen. And according to him, after that altercation was happening between your brother and the Rockefeller dudes, Jay walked up to you by himself, said something to you, and he said that from his point of view, it looked like Jay punched you like in the chest, and it looked like a punch. He didn't see a knife, but after he hit you, you dropped. And he said that he saw Jay standing there with a knife, just sort of looking at himself going, I can't believe I just did this. Chris Gotti said he got Jay into his car, took his knife, hit it, put Jay in his car, and had him take off. This is Chris Gotti's play-by-play situation of what happened. He said he was standing right there when it happened. And once again, he said Jay's his man, but he said he has no animosity towards you at all. When you hear this story, what do you think?
I heard a story about everybody who was there has a different account of what happened. What happened was between me and Jay, right? And the person who stabbed me, right? It's not, like I said, if it was Jay, I would have responded that way. I would have showed you what I'm about. Like, I've been doing this for years. I've been stabbed. I've been to prison. I've been to wars. I felt a lot comfortable because I've been in those situations. But I had on a big shearling coat, a big sweater. I was, ready for war, right? But the drop is the drop. If you catch a person in a position to do whatever you do, but I watched the whole move play out. So I seen them. So once I seen that they surrounded my brother, I was like, okay, it's getting ready to go down. So I'm already conscious of, I seen the movements. I seen 1,000 people come through the metal detectors and the alarms going off. And I'm saying, well, goddamn, they never moved like this before. What is the urgency? Why is everybody crewed up? Then my instincts kicks in and says, okay, I see what's going on, right? I heard rumblings about what was going on. Like I said, if people want to say, my first complaint was bootlegging is y'all got to change that narrative, but it was just too late. You know what I'm saying? Like, me and Jay's problems and what me and Jay went through, the reason why Jay puts my name in records over, and the first time I paid me and Big paid Jay-Z $10,000. You know what that rhyme was? He dissed me and Big. He said, how Big and untrust you in a studio with me? He was rapping with Lil Kim before he was anybody.
Oh, yeah, I remember that line.
Right? And he starts to talking about, they know how I get down. So I looked at Big and said, you hear this nigga? me. He said, don't worry about it, I'm gonna get him. But he was that guy. Nas put my name in records. Biggie has put my name in records. Havoc has, every prolific MC has put my name in records. You want to know why? Because they've seen from Jay-Z, me trying to help him. They knew nothing about what we were doing. We were doing some amazing shit. Yes, they was on some independent shit, trying to make some shit happen, but we was independent for real. We ain't get no money from Craig Kalman. We got $250,000 to make that album. That's it. Them videos and all that was coming out of my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, yes, at the time, Jay-Z was, he whatever it took for that for at some point, I'm trying to say throughout all of the problems on whether he was attempting to get rid of Biggie's, I'm the last of Biggie's ghosts.
Who do you think leaked Jay-Z's album?
I asked the person like I said, they were in a bootleg business. All they had to do was ask the king of bootlegging, yo, who got this album? You don't think they could have found out? This was all about marketing. This had nothing to do with any of it. All of it was just about selling records.
Well, you get stabbed. You get treated at a St. Vincent hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Police come in and question you.
Mm-hmm.
They ask you who stabbed you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them?
I tell them I have no idea. It was a bunch of people with knives. They said we heard it was Jay-Z. Was he there? I said Eve was there. Buster was there. Chris Lighting was there. Every Q-Tip was there. Every celebrity that I could remember was there.
I mean, do you know in 2023 specifically who stabbed you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you ever seen this person, confronted him, talked to him?
You'll see on the series, man.
Okay,
You
fair
can't
enough.
get all the information.
Okay. Jay-Z turns himself in.
Mm-hmm.
He pays a $50,000 bail, gets out.
Mm-hmm.
He's facing 15 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Are you cooperating in the investigation at that point?
What I'm doing is I'm following the lead of a person. At the time, it was the heads of Def Jam and Steve Stout who wanted to be the hero in this situation.
Okay.
And I was following Steve Stout's direction.
And what was Steve Stout telling you to do?
He walked me through how to get rid. His plan was to get rid of Dame Dash.
He told you that?
That was the plan.
Okay. So he wanted you to be part of this plan.
Because it was, like I told, I was brought to a meeting and we had a conversation. Everybody was trying to get me to, okay, what are we going to do? Like I said, it was a lot of money at stake. It was, I could have done several things. I could have been the executive, the bad guy who turned into an executive, who played victim and screwed up his whole entire life.
Cameron later on said that Jay-Z stabbed you over Charlie Baltimore. And Charlie Baltimore actually said that when she came to the party, you were already on the ground. And she said that Cameron says a lot of crazy shit out of his mouth.
I can't speak for what information Cameron has. Cameron wasn't there.
Well, Jay-Z is dealing with this, stabbing situation. Mm-hmm. He's facing 15 years. He drops a song, Guilty Until Proven Innocent, mm-hmm. with R. Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Basically talking about the incident.
Mm-hmm.
When you heard the song, what'd you think?
I thought it was a great song.
You were bothered at all by it?
No, because like I said, I was the guy who sat and listened to How Big and Don't Trust You in the studio with me. After I paid the kid $10,000.
Okay. And after 2 years, Jay-Z pleads guilty to second-degree assault, and he walks away with 3 years of probation. This was 2 years later. When you heard that he's getting probation for it, how'd you feel?
At that point, how many albums was he probably up? Maybe 3 million albums. So I said it worked.
It worked. Did you ever file a civil lawsuit against Jay-Z or Def Jam or anybody? No. Why not?
Because like I said, it was a plan.
Steve Stepp. Okay. Now, you didn't see Jay-Z for a very long time after that, until Heavy D died.
Yes.
What happened there?
I kind of just, kind of made my way past his security while everybody was like looking at me, like walking behind them, wondering what I was going to do. And I just, tapped him on his shoulder. He looked at his security like, how the hell you let this guy get this close to me? And, and I was like, yo, good to see you.
You shook his hand?
Yeah.
Did he say anything?
Yeah, he was like, what's up?
Must have been pretty awkward.
It was awkward for the people who were at Heb's funeral.
Right.
It wasn't awkward for me and Jay. Me and Jay don't have no problem.
Okay.
The only problem that I have with Jay-Z is him and Solange issue. You'll see it on the series.
Well, in 2000, Cameron drops the second album, SDE. And it seemed like after that, you kind of backed away from the music industry. You had a quote. You said, y'all take Cameron, y'all take these artists and leave me to recoup the future. I'm just going to chill. Music was never my passion.
I don't know what quote, why I probably said that shit. I don't know. Maybe.
Right. Well, because ultimately after that, Cameron, after that second album, was it maybe a few years later, Cameron ends up signing to Rockefeller. Why do you think that Cameron ended up signing Dame Dash?
Because they from Harlem, and it was one big plot for me to help break them and Big to help break them, and then all of a sudden they end up getting the masters. Like it was all one big screw and Biggie. That's what I say. It was like, yo, okay, y'all put in the work, got us here. Thank you. We'll go give Def Jam and Rockefeller, Oh Boy, and these dudes learned marketing and promotions from us, entertainment. They want to rewrite history as if their career started at Rockefeller. Like, nah, it started with the work that we put in to get you where you are.
Well, and then, Lil Kim dropped her second album, The Notorious K.I.M. It's under Undias Entertainment, but you weren't involved in that album at all.
I just signed off on the check.
Yep. The album ends up going platinum.
Yeah.
And it seemed like after that whole situation, you started to kind of pivot into movies.
Yes.
You teamed up with Shakim and Flavor Unit. And you guys made Crossover Media?
Yes. With Lillette and Renee McClain.
Right. That next year, 2001, was the whole shooting incident that happened between Lil Kim and Capone Noriega's crew, which was tied into the whole Foxy Brown incident and so forth. Were you around Lil Kim when that was happening?
No.
So you were already separated by that point?
Well, we lived, it's funny because we lived in the same complex. We seen each other every day.
Okay.
They were like, I was their uncle. Like, regardless of whatever was happening, we still had a, he there, he right there. We can walk to knock on his door.
Right. But you weren't doing any sort of day-to-day
like I
of
said,
any sort.
No. I was just arguing with Puff about how much money, all that money he was fucking up. He was digging them so much in the hole.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that whole situation ended up being a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
I interviewed C. Gutta
Yeah.
He was one of the shooters when that happened. And Lil Kim ended up perjuring herself because she said that she didn't know C. Gutter, she didn't know D-Rock. And, you know, the police came in and was like, okay, here's you guys together. Here's, you know, you mentioning him in these songs and the liner notes and everything else like that. And she ended up going to jail for, was it a year?
Yeah.
You know, and she blamed Lil C's because Lil C's was forced to cooperate, but he just had to say, yes, Lil Kim knows these guys, which was not a secret to anyone. And even C. Gutter was saying he had no idea why Lil Kim was trying to lie because he had already admitted what he had done and he was already on his way to prison. When you saw that situation unfold the way it did, and you know C. Gutter, you know D-Rock, you obviously know Kim, people are going to prison and so forth. How'd you feel?
I was mad at Puff.
Why?
Because he was in charge. He said that he could do what I did, and he could, you know, make it all flow the right way, and it was, you know, they went to Fed jail. How you let Kim go to Fed jail? She's Kim.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? Like, you know, I'm telling you, it's, you know, but they were blinded. They were young, big past, you know, it was a lot of trauma. Everybody was living in a fog, and Puff was saying, I got y'all. And the only person who they became was him, and everybody else, you know.
Well, in 2004, you came out with the first film that you directed, The Cookout, starring Queen Latifah. Ja Rule was in it. Eve was in it. Jennifer Lewis, Danny Glover.
Farrah Fawcett.
Tim Meadows.
Yeah.
Number 8 at the box office. It made $12 million worldwide. So now you actually have a solid film project under your belt. A few years later, in 2007, you did The Perfect Holiday, also starring Queen Latifah, with Morris Chestnut, Charlie Murphy, Gabrielle Union. That opened up at number 6.
It opened up to I Am Legend, that took $75 million the first weekend, and Alvin and the Chipmunks that took $45 million.
Right. So now you have two films under your belt. You continue to make films after that?
Yeah, I did the Cookout 2. And we did that independently. And I developed a few things after that. I directed Charlie Murphy's first comedy special. So yeah, I've done some commercials and, you know, some more music videos in between that. You know, just that's always been my passion. You know, I came to Big. He wanted the music, and I wanted to, you know, to be a director, and that's why he gave me my first shot at doing Plays Anthem.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, in 2009, the Biggie movie comes out. You watched it?
Yeah.
And what'd you think?
I thought that Gravy did a great job.
Yeah.
Playing him, but you know, I mean, the story is, you know, and I don't. Everybody has their own version. Everybody has their own Biggie moment, and can tell a story. You know, that story was not Biggie's voice; it was someone else's voice, and you know, and that's why I hope I can do him some credit with the series. It'll be the first time you really ever heard Big's voice.
Well, in 2012, you end up linking up with Katt Williams.
Well, I met him on The Perfect Holiday. He was in that movie.
Back in 2007.
Yeah.
So, but by 2012, you started working with him.
Professionally, I became his manager in 2012. And I kind of took him out on an independent tour for the Cat Pockets tour and DVD, which I executive produced.
Right. And things were going well between you and Katt Williams until Katt wanted to bring someone else on the team.
Yeah, at the end of this sort of 32 city independent tour, the special we did, Catpocalypse, we did an amazing deal at E1, 70-30 in his favor. They shipped like 400,000 DVDs at $20 a piece. We do this really independent, successful run, get the special done. Live Nation comes in, guarantees him 10 dates to restart, kindle their romance. And he says, I think you should work with Suge Knight. And I was like, who? You really think that I'm going to work with Suge Knight? And I told him, fuck you and Suge Knight, give me my commission. And the next thing you know, they went all downhill. Like, it was Suge beating up people and Katt not showing up to shows. And
yeah. Well, at one point when Katt was with Suge went approached some woman who was filming them, forcibly took her camera, broke it, and so forth. And that ended up being one of his strikes during his trial, which ultimately made him plead guilty and get 28 years, along with the killing of Terry Carter, the other shit that he was into as well. So yeah, the two of them were not the greatest, greatest team.
It was bad.
And Katt Williams was actually part of Dipset at one point.
Yeah. Katt always wanted to be a rapper. Rap is rap, man. It's Barack Obama might have wanted to be a rapper at one point.
In 2014, didn't you reunite with Cameron and did the screenplay for the film Percentage?
Well, I executive produced it. Jacob sort of helped Cam put that movie together. Yeah. I kind of co-signed it with Shakim.
Right. Omar Gooding started it.
Yeah.
Co-started it.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Cameron after all those years?
Cam is, I enjoyed his creativity. We clashed a lot creatively just to, because I had this thing with Cam and I heard that he kind of traumatized Juelz with this same process, is that I always challenged Cam on where Cam thought he was better. I used to always challenge him that you haven't gotten better. This is subpar to me. So he was forced to, and I wasn't taking anything away from him. When Cam says that used to be like, Biggie would have did it this way, Biggie would have did it that way. And I was saying, no, Cam, right? Cam is a gold artist, right? That's his career. He's always he went platinum after Def Jam bought some records on Old Boy and all that when he first got to Def Jam. But he's a legitimate gold artist like Redman and Method Man and all of these other guys, right? Those legitimate gold artists, right? So Cam didn't want to put in the work or listen to what it took to, Puff had to tell Big, Machine Gun Funk is not going to get you 2 million album. Right? Nas had to do Lauryn Hill, If I Ruled the World, to get to that level. Jay had to come. Jay didn't really start making big records until Pharrell. You know what I'm saying? Like everything else was still this underground rapping choruses. And if you want to sell millions of records, here is what we learned, and this is how you do it. That's why Puff was so successful.
Well, in 2017, the Tupac movie comes out, All Eyes on Me. You watched it?
I actually watched it along. I was in LA. I was living in LA. Benny Boom called me and made me come to the screening, and I sat in a room with all of these death row people. And I sat there watching this movie and feeling them looking at me with certain parts of the movie. And I'm looking. And when after the movie was over, I just left. I didn't even, they wanted me to stay and do a Q&A and talk about it. And I was like, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, why would y'all do this? All of these stories are made up. The reason why those movies didn't do well, because Eminem was here to tell his own story.
Yeah, Frank
right?
Wow.
That's why 8 Mile was the way it was brilliant.
Straight out of Compton.
Straight out of Compton, Ice Cube, Dre's, they were here.
DJ Yellow.
Yeah,
Ren.
Biggie,
Yeah.
Big didn't tell this story, right? Pac wasn't here to tell his own story.
Right, because in All Eyes on Me, there was once again the inference that Big somehow set up Pac
Yeah,
for the
they
shooting.
kept doing these dramatic
Right.
shots.
And there was a scene when they kind of looked at each other, right?
Yeah, that's
Which
what's for
never happened.
Hollywood version, and they pushed into their eyes like, you set me up, and I'm like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, it's for Hollywood, right? So I'm saying, nah, no, because especially the person that you're gonna meet in my story about Tupac is a whole nother story. A whole nother story. The truth. We're not embellishing on any of it.
Well, Lance and Rivera, we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
We've been talking about doing this interview for a while.
Yeah.
And we just had to wait for the right time to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you finally got to sit down and really tell the whole story, because I feel like other people have been telling your story for you.
Right.
For many, many years, for decades at this point.
Mm-hmm.
On this, on that, there's all these various versions of it. You interview other people, they tell you their version of it, but no one could really tell their story outside of the person who's actually telling it themselves.
Right.
So I'm glad you finally got to sit down and really tell what it is, because you were involved in a lot of very important things. You know, the way that you linked up with Biggie and what you guys accomplished together is legendary.
Yeah.
And, what you helped put together, people are still listening to today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look at the Mount Rushmore of hip hop, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who wouldn't put Biggie as one of those slots.
Yeah, but you still got to put Lil Kim as the female top of the mountain, right? Because she's still the her image and her substance is what's being emulated today after all these years.
Of
And
course,
Crush on
I mean,
You, I directed that video. So it's still relevant.
Well, yeah. I mean, even when you look at some of the early Nicki Minaj photo shoots, like she's literally emulating
current.
Well, yeah, even the current stuff. But I'm saying, even in the beginning when she's like squatting and holding the lollipop, these are remakes of Lil Kim shots that are iconic.
Right.
And it's a shame that the two of them never really got along, and there's still the back and forth. And it's interesting hearing how Kim and Foxy never squashed their beef, and hearing how the beef originally started is also interesting. And it's too bad, because I think if a lot of those females did get together, they would have made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, it's just a male chauvinistic business, and and women. That's why I fight for them. I fight for them, their existence. I push for them to exist. Just to have their own voice and be able to be who they are.
That's what it is. Lance and Rivera, appreciate you coming in. Wish you all the best, and looking forward to see what else you got coming up in the future.
Yeah, we got a lot going on.
That's what it is. Peace.
Fulton Street.
Fulton Street coming soon.
Coming soon.
Fulton Street?
Fulton Street coming soon.
Boom.